I'll set.
All right, let's call to order the Board of Supervisors monthly meeting for the Santa Cruz Estates Water Control District for Tuesday, May 17th. Roll call of officers: Ben Bogas, Jim Bradford, Jennifer Finazzo, Attorney Richard Pringle, Secretary Treasurer Chris Lawson, and 17 guests. We'll skip over the engineer's report because we don't have an engineer tonight. So that'll lead us right into the chair's report and into the treasurer's report.
Oh, well, I came up fast, didn't I? Okay, so for tonight, what we have is you have the schedule of bills to pay with the check detail. I can start passing that out now, and then you all need to decide whether or not you want to pay Morris Depew and or Sweeperman. I brought last month's invoices back up that we did not sign last month forward, and that you can have a discussion whether you want to sign those or not. And then I have the current month. That's the bank statements. Mm-hmm. The current month Morris Depew bill. One thing I will notice about the Morris Depew bill is when you look at the comparison between this year and last year, this year is less than last year. Whether that is relevant or not, but it is. You have, for general maintenance, we are about 95.82% collected for this year's revenues. I just received today at 4:45 an email from the county about the CIP, so we've got another $7,500 coming in for that, which will probably take us to about the same percentage level as the general maintenance. So if we really you have a balance sheet, you have an income and expense comparison, and that's where I showed you. You can see how Morris Depew's bill is actually this year to date at $67,162. Last year, this time it was $75,997. You also have a balance sheet. We have a grand total. I talked last time about how the landscape was going to be different with the reports, and that's because of the work that Tuscan and Company has done and the adjustments that they have made to our finances, and I'll let them speak to that. But that's why there's a significant difference in how they look. Okay? So we'll get more on that from them. Looking at the comparison between this year and the budget that we have, you have that there. We budgeted for the year $499,805. We spent $310,228. So the annualized difference is $29,114 less. It's a negative number. And the reason it's negative is because we have yet to fund anything towards the $50,000 contingency that we had planned in the budget, so that's what's driving that number down. They had budgeted for the engineer $80,000, even though they had spent considerably more than that last year. So that is 26% over budget. I haven't gotten any legal bills from Mr. Pringle's office for several months now, so he is rather under budget, but hopefully he'll catch up. Everything other than the property appraiser is pretty much on target. You will notice also on the GM administration, we have changed. One of the things of the changes are how we handle the gates remotes. Before, we used it as an offset to the gate charges, expenses, and we can't do that anymore. So now we're showing that as an administration, part of the administration of the district, as an expense, and then the revenue is going to show up as other income on your reports. So that's a big change from how. So you'll see that.
And that's just for the clickers.
That's for the clickers, for the remotes.
I had seen that in there earlier, but it was like a $20,000 number, wasn't it?
No, that $20,000 number was the Brooks.
Okay.
So
that's right.
Right. So when you
still
get
said other income.
So when you see down at the other income, we budgeted $20,000, which because we only budgeted for the Brooks, but we threw in the gate remotes to that number. In addition to, we also threw in the repair work for that culvert that the insurance paid for. So what Tuscan Company said to me was, we cannot use monies that we have coming in to offset expenses because it looks like we're hiding things. So the GASB doesn't allow us to do that. So anytime we have money coming in, it needs to be shown as other income and then identified later.
So like when we get like from that accident, we get it reimbursed. It'll
It's
have to go
gonna-
through that miscellaneous.
It's going to show up as other income.
Okay.
Yes. So that's a big difference. Use connection fees were still down by about 9% from where we were, but we're 11,350, and they still seem to be going kind of strong. So that may catch up. Any questions? So in addition, you have all of the reports, the final reports for April through the end of April, later in your packet that we'll be approving when we approve the minutes. But we're also going to start approving these reports that we presented today too
Okay.
for May.
Okay.
The other thing on my report, or on my topic, we had discussed the invoice for Brad Gallagher for the easement vacation, and I have that calculated at $2,365.70. That was provided to you earlier in the month. That's a compilation of the legal fees that were directly attributable to Brad's vacation, as well as what Bill Morris had supplied from his office for the work that they had done. So with your permission, then I will mail that out.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, you have a copy. You should have a copy in your stuff. Okay.
That it?
That's all I have.
Mr. Pringle?
Yes, sir. Ms. Lawson, as Mr. Chairman, has submitted a letter of resignation that has an effective date of May 31. And because she wears multiple hats, she's the treasurer of the district, she's the secretary of the board, and she's also the manager / superintendent over the quote, works, closed quote of the district as defined in the statute. If you don't have a meeting until June, and there's not a meeting scheduled right now for June, but if you decide to have a meeting in June, then you'll have the time period between June the 1st and that meeting date, whenever the next meeting is, June, July, whatever. After Ms. Lawson's resignation, when you'll need to handle the tasks that Ms. Lawson is performing, especially with regard to the treasurer's aspects. So I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, to add an item to your agenda to discuss selection of a treasurer / board secretary / manager for the time beginning June the 1st, and I have some thoughts about
You put down after
that.
that.
Yes. Sounds good.
That would be the item that I would ask you to do. And besides that, Mr. Chairman, and everything that you have on your lengthy agenda, I don't have anything else. I'm sorry, I do. I have one thing to add, and that is that I did receive yesterday a letter from the attorney for the property owners where they're wanting the power, the easement for the power, underground easement.
Yes.
I finally yesterday received a letter from them from the lawyer saying that they have finished their plans and they are different than they were before. And so I'm going to take a look at that. That may be something else to consider at your next board meeting, is how to respond to that question.
Okay. How do we go about adding another meeting? Because we're going to probably have to add a meeting.
Yes, sir. I did not talk about that, but yes, sir, that would be another item to add under old, new, and unfinished business, a possible meeting in June. Yes, sir. We talked about that last month. So yes, sir. That would be another item.
All right.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
So do we need to be those voted on and
To
add
amend
them?
the agenda,
Mm-hmm.
yes, ma'am, we can.
Yeah, so moved to add the discussion to replace our secretary treasurer, and secondly to add a second meeting for the month of June.
Or Actually, you don't have any meetings currently scheduled for the.
Or at a meeting,
We're
yes,
just
Yeah,
for
thinking to have it
June
Can we
meeting.
do like a workshop and then have a meeting? Do both?
Yes, ma'am. You can do that.
Is there a second?
One thing, oh, yes, I'll second that.
And you pass?
We had left hanging the Morris Repute. Do we need to talk about that, or that's what's on the agenda though?
Yes, sir, that's on the agenda. Yes, sir.
Any comments from the guests? Please.
I was not at the last meeting, but I did listen to the 4 hours and 17 minutes. Which was very interesting. And there were a couple of things, I took about 4 pages of notes because there were several things that I felt were not properly addressed. One thing I just want to clarify, when you were talking about the concern over previous bills being paid that probably were not right or overcharged. I just want to say that in the 14 years that I was on this board, we always, to start with, at the end of the meeting, we would sit and go over the bills. This was the way it used to be. And we would sit here for like an hour and go over every item and so forth, and it got to be really cumbersome. So Nelson Pink was on the board at the time, and he was new. And so he was taking a lot of time because he wasn't familiar with the different billing systems. So I believe it was either Bud Lawson or Julia, whoever was at the time, it was right around the time of the transition, decided to make a change and send the bills out ahead of time so that each board member would have a chance to look at the bills and question anything they were concerned about prior to the meeting, so that when we got to the meeting, they could just be signed. And that's the way it was. So if you got a bill, and I can't tell you how many times over the years that I would call and say, what's this item here? And why are we being charged that? And I wasn't the only one, that's how we did it. And I don't know in the last several months what people have been doing, but we always questioned it and we solved the problem beforehand. So like in the case of Morris Repute, if we saw an item that we thought was high or why is this here, we would get our question answered ahead of time. And it wasn't just Morris Repute, there were some of the other vendors too that we would question. And I mean, I started thinking back and I was thinking of all the different things that come up. And if we had a problem with the lawnmowers, if we had a problem with anybody else, I mean, we didn't fire them. What we did was we'd have them correct the problem and we'd straighten it out, or we would have the bill adjusted or whatever. But we always looked over every bill and we had that opportunity, which is the reason why they're mailed ahead. So I just want to say that, I mean, if anybody was concerned that you've been signing checks for things that maybe were overcharged, you shouldn't be doing that because you have the bills ahead of time. That was one of the main things. And the other thing I was concerned about was when you were talking about the gates. First of all, the one gate, the only issue with Mr. Natick's gate is that it's not permitted. I mean, if you permit that one gate, then it's legal. Then all your gates in the neighborhood will be permitted. Now, when those gates were installed, it was the board's decision to allow 2 feet on the inside of each gate so people could walk around. So that was for pedestrian traffic. Anybody who rides a bicycle does not want to ride a bicycle over the grass and the bumpy dirt. So it was pedestrian traffic. Now what happened over the years, the 4-wheelers came along and they started making that 2 feet wider and wider by going on private property. So the private property owners would come and say, wait a minute, I've got these 4-wheelers and they're going around the gate and so forth. And they started putting rocks in. And some of those rocks did come and block the whole 24 inches of opening. Now, that seems to be the problem. And I think there's only, like you mentioned at the last meeting, there's only about 4 places that is a problem. I kind of know where they are too. But just so you know, that was the intent originally, for the 2 feet walk around on the inside. So I just want to pass that along. There were other issues too, but I'll just mention that at this time.
Thanks, Judy.
So just for the record, you're saying that all the gates have 24 inches to pass.
All the
Bonita-
gates, all the
wait a
gates.
minute. On Bonita, Bill, Tuck, and Mariah. That's what you're,
When they were
The
installed, they
gates
did.
that were, when they were installed initially by the water district, 24 inches was allowed for a walk around on the inside. So, but those gates were all permitted, they were all put in by the district except for the one by Ben's, and that was permitted later. So all the gates are permitted, is what I would say. The only difference with your gate, it isn't permitted, so
No,
if
no,
they
no,
permit
okay.
it,
two things. One is, it's very easy to go and see that there are many gates throughout Benitaville especially, as well as Mariah, that you cannot walk around.
that's right.
In fact, you have to almost like lean around into the canal and get around the gate. So that's not true. The second is, you're saying that mine is the only permitted gate, and that might be true, because I have not seen any of the permits or the issued permits.
No, I said your gate is not permitted.
Right, so mine's the only one that's not permitted. So if that's true, I would like to see the permits for all of the existing gates before that goes into the minutes. Because again,
They're permitted by the city.
so,
Yes.
okay, so that might be true, but before we make that claim and put it in the minutes, I would like to see proof of that. Because I don't know if that's true.
If you don't believe me, I'm just telling you that's the way it was.
No, I'm not the way it was, you're saying what it is. So
Right.
all I care about what it is, right?
Well,
All
the
who
permits
were-
were never withdrawn. The permits have always been there.
Yeah. That was part of the whole package of the, putting the district together.
The CIP.
Yeah.
So where are those permits? And let's account. Before we're saying that I am the only one, I would like to see that shown. I don't
Because
think,
your gate was added later. And it was not added by the district. So it's not, doesn't have a permit on it, that's all. But it's easy enough. I can't see why.
so
it
who
wouldn't be.
permitted them?
They were, it was permitted through the city. We had to request the city to permit them.
So every gate, other than my one gate on the south end of my property, they are all permitted through the city.
Yes.
Every currently existing gate is permitted through the
Correct.
city.
Yes.
Correct.
And where would I find that permit?
City.
Maybe Mr. Morris would be the one that would have that, or it might be on the file. Maybe Chris has something in district, but City of Benita would have it. I think they probably have it too. So Mr. Morris would probably be able to head in the right direction.
So how many, you know how many gates there are?
I don't offhand, but I know it's pretty.
There's a slew of gates, there's all different styles, and I'm
Well, most
a
of
little
them are the
skeptical
same.
that
The
those
ones-
are all permitted.
The ones that the district put in are pretty much the same.
Yeah, they all
Only
look
one
like
that's
that. They look like a road barrier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the city, so my gate, is the beef with the water district or the beef with the city?
The only beef with your gate has been that it was put in by the previous owner without a permit. So it should have been, if everybody seems to want the gate to stay, which I don't care, I don't know who cares. But I'm just saying, in order to make it consistent, it should be permitted. And so I would assume that the water district would have to request from the city to permit it. Does that sound correct to you, Mr. Franklin?
Yeah. Because when I went to get mine, I went to the city and they said go to the water district first, and that's whenever I turned up at a board meeting 12 years ago, whatever it was. And then I had to come here to request it,
Right,
and then it went that way.
right.
Because the city was like, it's the water control district right away, they do whatever, they gotta give you the permission, so, and then the city just stamped it. So, but,
In any event, before the city will do anything, they are supposed to hear from the district and
Yeah.
get, and see the district.
And I think we got a letter drafted up from the attorney and the engineer and all that too. I mean, it's just, all it is, in my eyes, permitted, and it's over. Forget about it. I don't care about your gate. No one wants to use that. All the other landowners that live on your street were here. They don't want to open it up. I don't live on that street. That's yours. So we just got to make it legal. That's my comment, or my 2 cents. But
So it's still not clear now, I'm still hearing that it's permitted by the city or it's permitted by the water district.
I would,
Mr. Chairman, if
please.
The permit is from the city for the gate. They have a gate permit that they require for any property in the city. Supposedly, any property in the city has to get a city permit to install a gate like that. But before the city will issue the gate permit, they need either a letter of authorization and approval from the board for the gate to be installed, or the district would have to apply for the gate permit from the city itself, one of those two. So it's two layers of approval, first from the district and then from the city.
Exactly. Simple enough.
So
Get the board's approval, then go to the city.
okay, so I don't. This whole thing about board approval, I can bring this up now or I can bring it up at another time. But here's the thing. So we're talking about codes and code enforcement, pretty much. So my question is, what authority does the water district have to establish codes and establish code enforcement? Because that's a big deal, right? And so if you look at chapter 298, I don't see anything in there about that. I look at chapter 162, there's a whole process and standards for establishing codes and code enforcement, none of which we follow. So this can't be it. So there has to be some sort of statutory authority to do all this. And so I'm not trying to be non-compliant, but I don't know what I'm complying with. So
Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to try to answer
Please.
your question. Yes, sir. Chapter 298 governs water control districts and their authority. One of the items listed in Chapter 298 is the authority of the water control district to control the development or the placement of any improvements within a district right-of-way. Back when the district was formed, there was first an easement document recorded that created easements in favor of the water district over all of the parcels of real property in San Carlos Estates Water Control District. Then later, there was actually, it's in Drainage District Plat Book 1, page 1. There is a plat that is recorded in the official records of Lee County at Drainage District Plat Book 1, page 1. And it is a plat of the San Carlos Estates Water Control District. And in that plat, there is a dedication of easements. So there are the two documents. There's the recorded easement document of the land from the landowners that created essentially, except right there around your property, a 60-foot wide drainage easement, drainage and road easement throughout all the streets and all the canal ways of the district. And if you look at that Plat Book 1, page 1, Drainage District Plat Book 1, page 1, there's a picture. I have it. I'll be glad to show it to you even after the meeting. But it's a picture that shows all of the lots in the district and also shows all the roadways. And so between that easement and that Plat Book page, map, and that dedication of the easement in favor of the district for the roadways and the drainage ways, that's what creates the district's right over those 60-foot wide strips. So ultimately what you have is the property owners of all the lots essentially own to the center line of the roadway, of all the roadways, but they own subject to the district's 60-foot wide easement. And within that 60-foot wide easement area, the district controls the the board's decision controls the uses in the district's right-of-ways. And as a part of the district's control of those right-of-ways, the district has adopted some use standards, and those are the those are the standards that apply. It's not a code enforcement standard there. It is a district board standard that says this is what is allowed in the road, in the district's 60-foot wide easements, this is what is not allowed. And also says that if you want to install an improvement in the district right-of-way, you have to come to the board and get permission for that installation. And then one other thing that I will tell you is with regard to code enforcement, there is a part of the city's code that specifically refers to the San Carlos Estates Water Control District and says that the city will exercise its code enforcement authority to assist the district in controlling, in having code enforcement essentially involved in the district's right-of-ways and the use of the district's right-of-ways. And so that's why part of when a property owner comes along and pulls a building permit to build a structure on their lots, the city, they don't always do it, but they are supposed to. In fact, we got a case tonight where they didn't do it. But the city is supposed to make sure that there is a right-of-way connection permit, a driveway permit issued by the district for that lot before the city issues the final certificate of occupancy for the improvements on that lot. And it's supposed to happen, and it's in the books, in the city's books, and many times it does happen, but sometimes it doesn't. And but that's what's supposed to happen. There's the connection between the city and the district with regard to code enforcement.
So the city has not contacted me, so the code enforcement has not been engaged.
No, sir. No, sir. Not at all. Not at all. And in fact, if I may, and I apologize, I didn't want to talk much tonight. With your property, what happened was the prior owner installed the gate without the district's permission, and the district had, through the CIP program, had paved the roadway there, and the intention all along had been to connect the road from the south through to Strike Lane for the benefit of the property owner south of you, and she blocked that off. And so the district filed an action, a lawsuit. They did not go to code enforcement. They filed a lawsuit.
Eminent domain.
Yes, sir. Part of it was an eminent, there were several counts. One of those counts was an eminent domain count to condemn the notch area. You may have heard me refer to the notch area before. There's a small square, a small area that the district, that is not a part of that plat that I talked about earlier. When you look at the roadways,
Right.
they touch, they corner touch,
Right.
but they don't have a continuous area for driving. And so that was one of the claims. And the other claim was that the property owner had illegally erected and trespassed on the district's right-of-way to the south where the gate is located.
So that was resolved 3 years ago.
The eminent domain case was resolved in favor of the landowner. And then the other count regarding trespass was not resolved. It was not pursued. And so at this point, normally the court will, of its own volition, file a motion to order the parties to either proceed with the litigation or to dismiss the lawsuit. That has not happened to this.
So the eminent domain, though, was not just the notch at the north end. It was a take the entire stretch of Tuck Road that goes to those parcels.
I don't believe so. My recollection was that it was related to the notch area because when you look at that plat map that I told you about, there's the road coming down from Strike Lane south. that dead ends at the north end of the canal. And then there's the roadway coming north from Mariah Lane, I believe it is, from the south, that is within the 60-foot wide right-of-way there. That is the canal and the roadway. And that has been paved up to the end of the roadway easement that is in favor of the district.
Right, so where the road ends, the right of way ends.
I believe it's very close to that. It may be right there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But, I mean, I read the lawsuit, and it looks like it was an attempt to take the entire stretch of the Tuck Lane, not just to make that connect. So,
I believe what was intended to be said in that action was that the purpose, the reason that it was necessary to condemn the area, the notch area that I referred to, was to complete the roadway from the south all the way through to Strike Lane. I believe that was what was intended. Yes, sir.
Okay, everyone happy?
And
Yo, yes.
I wouldn't have brought this up, but with the discussion of the non-permitted gate, it'll be interesting to see if the gentleman is able to get a permit. We had a similar situation where our previous landowner had installed a gate, and I received a letter from the district saying that that gate could not be closed because it was not permitted. And sort of along those lines, when we put up a fence, we just tore the gate out. Had we known that there was a process, well, we were told that Bonita Springs would never, ever approve any additional gates on those roadways. So because of all of that, we just tore it out, and it's like, okay, whatever, because only pedestrian and bicycle traffic was supposed to go through there. However, we have cars pulling clear down by us. We're at the corner of Pinson and Mariah. So we have cars pulling down our way, probably, with the exception of recently, probably innocently so, because they don't know it doesn't connect. It looks like a road.
I agree.
But we also have golf carts, we have four-wheelers, and now there's enough area around the gate not on the canal side, but on the other side of that gate, that golf carts and four-wheelers can get through there. And so we're seeing some of that traffic. Whether those are new people or I don't know. But if some kind of, I guess my purpose of my comments, if some kind of signage could be put at the entrance of Mariah and Pinson, often onto Mariah from Pinson and any other streets that this is a similar problem to, stating that motorized vehicles or whatever the language needs to be are not permitted on that. So I don't know if that's something the board could do, or if there's a problem with that, I don't know.
What's your name?
Mike Peel, P-E-I-L.
And just to add, at the time those gates were permitted, we were told the same thing, that the city would not permit anymore.
Right.
That was what we were told, and that's why there was kind of a lot of to-do over Ben's gate, but because it had been in his deed, and that was a whole other story, but they had also said, that's what they told us at the time.
Yeah.
That the gates that were there were it. So whether that's changed, I don't know, but you're right, that they did say that.
So I'm sorry, I said this last time, and it wasn't very clear, but this whole thing around gates, around the perimeter roads, it's, yes, those roads are both, the property owners own them, but there's a right of way, right? So there's dual, whatever you want to call it. There's an interest, I'm gleaning here that there's an interest by the water district to prevent roads, cars and other vehicles willy-nilly riding around Bonita and Mariah and hopefully Tuck. Okay. The only way to protect the water district's interest is to randomly hope that us property owners on those roads apply to this kind of arcane process of, again, Bonita to the water district, and hopefully we put these in place.
Right.
So now we have properties and parts of these roads that are well protected, other parts that are not. So, and we have people like me who, and I didn't put the gate up, by the way, that has a gate that nobody seems to like except for the 4 property owners on that road. So I guess I'm suggesting as somebody, as the water district, take control over this and figure out what you want to control and not have it just randomly up to owners happening to, yeah, I want a gate, I don't want a gate. If you want to protect those roads, protect them systematically in a way that's effective without all this drama and ambiguity that
I
would come here.
I would just
right?
say, come, ask for the gate, put the permit in, done. It'll get signed. Next thing you know, you're off to the races. Put
I'm
your gates
beyond that. I'm not talking about my gate. I'll deal with, I mean,
He's done
Yeah,
with
That's
conformity.
true. I know
Please.
what he's talking, I think I know what you're talking. The district in the past, the district installed 4 gates, I think, maybe
More than that.
than-
Driving barricades.
around the perimeter. Yes, ma'am. And so, because the city is reluctant to approve a permit by a property owner to install a gate over the district's right of way, the district installed gates. And the district could do that in other locations around the perimeter road. The district could decide that the district will control that access through district gates, and then the district could apply for those, and they have done that in the past. They would apply for the gate permits from the city, and then install the gates that are up to block vehicle traffic, but to allow the pedestrian traffic. So they could do that, and from time, and that's at the discretion of the board. So that is, if that is a desire of property owners for the board to take that kind of action, these are the folks to talk to.
right, so we're not going to get there tonight, but I'm just
Right.
saying in the future that you think about what you want on those roads and put a system up there to control it, to keep out what you don't want, to filter in and out. You know, bicycles, yes, and
Well, I think there's like 3 or 4 issues here at hand. One is the driving barricades, in essence, of the ones that are existing now. And there's no conformity amongst them. Because the homeowners that live on the south end have, because I've been through them, yes, you can get a golf cart through, a 4-wheeler through. The ones on the north end, you can barely walk through. There's 2 of them you cannot walk. The ones, they've got barbed wire and sticks and rocks and things like that. But the 24 inches, that's, I don't even think it's 24 inches, like a foot. So you've got the nub, the walkway, and then the driving barricade. Then I believe like the third issue is the fact that then you have the property owners that want to have a gate for personal use to block traffic. So I recall from our last meeting that there was a discussion about one, conformity, meaning that we're going to have to clean up and figure out and conform all the driving barricades and either allow the gates through the whatever permitting process with a conformity to it, and then on top of that having driving barricades and allowing only walking and biking traffic.
The reason why the gates are where they are is they're between
Correct.
2 of the side roads. And one other reason for that is so that they can access, usually there's a fire hydrant about in that spot, so that the fire department can access from both sides and not have other gates in between.
Correct.
So in other words, that's why when they said no more gates, it was because they were put in certain places for a reason. So you go down any one of the side streets and you can go left or right as far as that gate where there was a fire hydrant, and same coming the other way. So that had a lot to do with it at the time, because when they were deciding the placement of those gates, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of thought went into it as to where they should be. So there were reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you start having everybody add more gates, you know, you're
Correct.
just, you know, so which is why they said no more gates. This is it. There are gates and that's it. So
That's not
the
true
history.
anymore,
I'm
because
just
the city
giving
does,
you-
the
I'm
city
just
does
giving
allow
you history.
gates, so.
So that's the history.
We gotta wrap this up, though. What's,
Yeah, personally, I don't
Extra
care
one
if
and
there's a gate on Mariah at Benson, but it's an inexpensive, relatively
Conforming the
quick
driving barricades.
help would be
And
to
then
have
having gates for
signage right
basically
there
from owners
that
personally.
says
Pedestrian
only
traffic only.
pedestrian, no motorized vehicles. And that's, if the board would consider that at some point, we would certainly appreciate
You do that
that.
also.
Russ, we did put some.
I think we should do that now.
But the one on ours is
Like
that
the
the
house, I
gate,
believe,
people
that
can't
there's
see
only
it,
some
so
signs
it's-
made up according to Mike, because he told me there was. So what signs did Mike just recently have make it up? He told me that you had authorized him to make.
All he did was make up a sign for Busy Bee and Mariah.
Oh, okay.
It's a street sign, or-
He did-
Yeah, the street sign. Put the street sign
he
back
didn't
up.
say that to me.
So you could, Mr. Chairman,
Right,
you
Mike?
could put a
Yeah.
no through traffic,
Yeah.
dead end, all kinds of signage could be used to accomplish.
Do we have money in our budget to buy some signs, or are we cutting it that close? If we don't have the money, then it's something we should do after October, when we get our new fiscal year, and have some money then.
A lot depends on whether or not you want to fund that contingency fund or not.
I think that we shouldn't tap into that for that purpose.
Yeah.
I would think.
I don't think the signs would cost that much.
Just make a note.
It
Put
depends
a
on
line
how
under
many
that.
signs you
I see my
want,
line,
and-
put it back up.
Well, we're talking about every road out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think.
Well,
we-
And maybe 2 signs per road because one's gonna face this way, one's gonna face
That's
that
what I
way.
said, there's gonna be a number of signs, and the cost for those, unless the people who happen to currently live on those roads, and if they would like to have it ahead of time and they see the way they want to fund it, then I would only suggest that they use the standard sign that we would use. And they could go ahead and put one up, but.
Mike, do we have any signs extra in your storage?
Oh, only into the road, the 9 reflector signs.
Okay. But
And-
we don't have any pedestrian, non-motorized?
No, nothing like that.
There are, if you wanted to, if it's only for the purpose of seeing them, there are a few up that can be looked at.
Amazon has them for $28.
Do they look at like the ones we currently have up? They need to be standardized as the signs we have.
That's,
In metal, not wood.
ultimately, it's a district right of way, and therefore the board needs to decide what that sign is gonna look like and what's gonna go up. So it has to be a decision.
Just something to put on like as a line item
Can I just
for
bring-
discussion for like
Let's
next
put it
meeting
on
or
till
something.
I'll bring
Or, yeah,
pictures.
October when we're doing the budget or
Let's do it on
something.
the new budget year and deal with it then. They've been down for such a long time, another 2 months,
I'll
3
bring
months
some
is no
signs.
matter.
Options.
Okay. Awesome. All right.
So can I put tax strips down the, oh, no.
I wish. Okay.
Just don't tell anybody.
Old, new, and unfinished. You have a presentation for us.
Oh, I'm up?
I guess. Sorry about
No. I do want to apologize, though. You got the B team because my boss had a death in the family, and so he's normally here, but that wasn't going to work today. So.
No. Not BT.
All right, so you should all have in front of you the financial statements. It's still in the draft form, but once we finish and get the red letters done and we got Chris's response to management letter comments, then we can finalize them with bound copies. There's a few more up there if anyone wants them. And then also there's a set of graphs they have.
And I think this was also emailed to everybody.
Yes.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is go through the financial statements real quick and point out a couple of the high points for you, and then I'm going to, normally we kind of use the graphs to go over the financial information just because it presents a multi-year picture. So I'll go through those as quickly as possible, and then we'll circle back because we did have several management letter comments, so I want to kind of run through those with you. Okay? Obviously, we've completed the audit, and I want to thank Chris for all of her help because it's not easy switching auditors and all the information that has to get provided, but she did a great job. Everything was very organized. She was very responsive. So we were able to work through as quickly as possible, and obviously, being a new client, there's a lot because we have to build a perm file and there's all kinds of stuff. So it does take quite a bit of time and attention. So I want to thank you for that. Okay, so first of all, We have, if you turn a couple pages back to, it should, page 2, just past the table of contents, and the second page of that letter, the second page of the auditor's report letter. One more page. Yep, there you go. Page 2. This is the opinion. This is the opinion page. Actually, I'm sorry. Flip back one page because I think it's.
There you go.
We decreased the font to fit everything on here, so there's more on the page. Right down at the bottom of that first page is actually the opinion, and you can see where it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of San Carlos Estates Water Control District. So that is the definition of a clean opinion, the highest level of opinion that you can have. So that's good. That's what you're looking for, and it's definitely what you want. If you flip back one more page to page 2, at the top of that page, you'll see it says emphasis of matter, and that's talking about a prior period adjustment. We did make an adjustment to your beginning fund balance to remove the assessment receivable balance. The reason for that is because as a government, you actually have 2 sets of financial statements. You have a fund basis set of financial statements and what's called a government-wide, which is really presented more on like a business type scenario. Fund statements are really meant to only show your current resources available, basically. So you don't show long-term debt, you don't show long-term receivables. The debt was never presented on the fund statements, but the receivable was, and what would happen is then your assessment, and I'm talking about the capital assessment portion, not your general maintenance tax assessment. So then when those capital assessments would come in, those amounts would go against the receivable and never hit your budget numbers, basically. So you'd have a very weird looking budget to actual statement. If I'm not sure if you noticed that in the past, but you would budget for, say, $500,000 in collections, and it would only show that you'd have like 70 or 80,000, and because the rest of it was going to reduce that receivable. So we took that receivable off and adjusted the fund balance for it. It is still in the government-wide statements, which is where it's appropriate to be presented, and the debt is in the government-wide statements also, but this note is basically saying that that's what we did. There's also a footnote regarding it, which is on page 26 of the financial statements, so you can see the fund balance presentation before and after that adjustment. Okay. So basically we had the original fund balance was at $3.25 million, and then the capital assessment receivable for phase 1 and phase 2, which is now gone, but we do it at the beginning of the year, to adjust those balances off and of approximately $2 million, and so your new restated fund balance is $1.2 million. Okay? And then just to give you like a little geography of the financial statements, after the opinion, there's a section called the Management's Discussion and Analysis. It is what's oftentimes referred to as the MD&A. It's basically a 3 or 4 page synopsis of what occurred in the district for the year. So it just kind of like hits on the high points. It is meant to be not in accounting jargon, so it's usually very easily readable and understandable. So if any of you want to grab that and look at that, it usually does a comparison of current and prior year. And then beyond that, you've got your financial statements, which consist of, like I said, your government-wide financial statements, your fund financial statements, reconciliations between the two, and a bunch of footnotes. And then lastly, there's several things that are required by the Auditor General, which increased this year. So now there's an additional exhibit in the back, which deals with your budget, and there's a whole laundry list of questions that you have to answer for the Auditor General. So that's towards the back of the section, along with the management letter comments and the response to the management letter comments. So if there's any questions about this, I can answer those now, or we can move on. If we want to come back, that's fine.
But we've already answered those questions for the Attorney General in that
Yes,
section.
yes,
Okay.
that's in there. I think it's Exhibit 2 is,
Will that be done yearly or no? Is it, we're set now?
you know, that is actually, we're not sure.
Okay.
This is the first year that that's been required, and what has happened, and I'm sure Mr. Pringle can tell you more about that, is there's been a little bit of a push to require more accountability, more oversight, more a push to get rid of, I'm not really sure, special districts. There's been a big push on that, and so now they have instituted some requirements to have operational audits. And some, they're phasing it in. Fire districts are the first ones to go that have to adhere to this requirement for fiscal year 2022. And then mosquito controls, are they the next ones?
And hospitals.
And hospitals. Jeff had said the other day he read something and it looked like that they had taken hospitals off. Oh, and then
Read the
water and
laws.
soil conservation districts. So this questionnaire, we believe, is a result of that. They're trying to information gather and then probably determine from there on, what the next steps will be. But there's lots of questions in there about, capital projects and your millage rates and all of that kind of stuff. So that's all been answered and it's in there. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go over the graphs. Basically, we usually try to do like a 5-year comparison, and obviously you've had plenty of years of audits that we were able to pull. Yeah. Did you lose your graphs?
Seeing the graph. So losing it comes under a different terminology.
I'll get you another.
It was
set.
kind of with this all together, these three together.
The one I got didn't have.
It's okay.
It's the colored page, Jim.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Sure.
It's very helpful.
You don't get one of those colored pages.
Except for your colorblind.
Yeah.
Is it really? I was going to say.
So the first page here is just a comparison of your assets over the past 5 years, and this is on a government-wide basis, which then it does include the receivable and the payable balances, or the receivable and debt balances. So you can see there in the beginning, the top of the page in that increase-decrease column. I'm just going to hit on some of the larger ones. If you combine the cash, the change in the cash, and the change in the investments, that's about $269,000. And that basically is equivalent to your profit and loss as far as your expenses over revenue for the year, which really is a result of you guys paying down that principal payment for phase 2. If you scroll down kind of towards the middle, you'll see the change in the capital assessments for phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 went down $467,000 and phase 2 $235,000. The phase 2 was paid off, and there was an additional principal payment in there to do that. And phase 1, you also made an additional principal payment of, I believe, $89,000. So that's what the result there is for the decrease. And then all the way down there, you've got depreciable assets net. That's just basically the depreciation expense on the assets that you do have on the books. That's what that change was. There were no additions to fixed assets. It was just depreciation expense. The next page is a comparison of your current liabilities, and there's really not that much going on here. There is some changes in payables, which is basically timing changes, and then you've got the current portion of your long-term debt, which went down because obviously you don't have as much debt. Mm-hmm. The next page is a comparison of your long-term liabilities, and again, that's just showing the change in your long-term debt, paying off the phase 2 and paying down the phase 1 sum. Page 4 is a comparison of your fund balance, and this is the first graph that's actually on a fund statement basis. So here you can see that there's the large number there is this increase, decrease in the non-spendable fund balance. Non-spendable fund balance means it's something that you can't convert to cash, really. So, like if you had deposits or prepaids, that sort of thing. But the reason for this here is because last year you had those receivables that were included in that, and so we adjusted that out. So that's why.
So, Lisa, what is that 2009-34? Because I see
That's
that
prepaid expenses.
it's prepaid expenses.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
you paid off phase 2 and all that.
The prepaid expenses, I think, is a little bit of insurance or something that's there. I mean, it's
okay.
just because you've already actually spent those funds, so that's why they classify it as non-spendable. The next page is a comparison of your non-ad valorem revenue, which for you guys, that's virtually all your revenue. So here you can see that the large increases there were the phase 1 assessments and the phase 2 assessments. And this is what I was talking about. If you take a look at this line, carry it back from 2017 forward, you'll see the change in that number, because in the past it was going to reduce the receivable. So it looks like you had a large increase in your phase 1 and phase 2 assessments for the year on this graph. But that's not really the case. It was just the accounting, the way the accounting was done. So that's where you can really see it clearly. And the 547 and the 72 that are in the 93021 numbers are basically, they're very close to your budgeted numbers, which is what you would expect. Okay. The next graph, which is the comparison of your expenses, there's not really a whole lot on there, except for if you go down to the bottom, you can see that change in the debt service of the 148,998, and again, that's just paying those additional principal payments from the prior year over the prior year amount. Okay.
Makes sense.
Are there any questions? Okay. Then I'm going to move on to the management letter comments, which are actually back in that financial statement packet. They start at page 33. And if anyone has any questions, it's okay with them, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to answer. Jeff's going to be very upset that he wasn't here tonight because he's going to be jealous that I drew such a crowd. That's never happened. Never.
They only came because they knew you were coming.
Right, exactly. So, yes, well, you should see it for the fire districts, right, Richard? Their financial statement reports are usually this big because of all the pension information. It's ridiculous, over 100 pages because of pension information and post-employment benefits. Okay, so from page 33 to 35 is basically just all of the things that the Auditor General requires us to check out. Are you in a state of deteriorating financial condition, those sort of things. So we kind of respond to those going through. So there's nothing really earth-shattering in that section. Starting on page 35, we have the beginning of the comments. There were no comments from the prior year auditor. And I just want to say that it's not unusual when you switch auditors to have comments come up. So there's nothing that crazy that's been going on or anything. There's nothing in here that's earth-shattering or, can't be fixed easily. It's just that there's professional judgment, different opinions, things along those lines. And, so these are things that oftentimes are more just like a best practice kind of thing and just maybe tightening things up a little bit and making it run smoother, I guess. So the first item there was just updating the website. There's a lot of things that special districts are supposed to post on their website. Notice of meetings, minutes, budgets, and there's various requirements of timelines of those sorts of things. So we have a compliance questionnaire that we send out to all the clients, and we actually kind of, follow up, and we do some of the checks ourselves. And there were a few things that we could not find, either just because of the structure of the website, or some links were broken. Some of them, I think, Chris fixed like immediately because we were talking about it on the phone. So we did notice that there were a couple of things, like they're supposed to post the district boundaries or map the district, so we're recommending that get on there. One of the budgets wasn't there, and again, there were links that were broken. So, like I said, nothing that can't be fixed easily. The next item is regarding carryover funds. This one's a little bit more involved. This year, for the 2022 budget, the budget that you're currently operating in, there is virtually no carryover funds being shown at all. Now, by Florida state statute, you're required to, when you present a budget, it's supposed to include all funds available to the district. Some people there's different interpretation of what that means. Some of them think it means the cash balance. Our firm takes it as the approach that it should be your fund balance, because that's really your net worth. That's what you have available to the district. If you only took cash, but you've got large payables there, that doesn't really show the picture then to put cash, because that money's already spent before you even start. So we have gone under the theory that all funds available is the net worth, the beginning fund balance for the year. That should be included in your balance as in your budget as a carryover balance. And then you do your budget, your revenues that you know are coming in, your expenses that are going out, and whatever pot is left becomes carry forward to the next year. So you're also not allowed by state statute to go over budget. But because of not bringing forward carryover funds, and because of making that large principal payment to pay down phase 2 loan, that made your expenses go over budget. So, and when they say you can't go over budget, they don't mean that, they mean the expenses. Like, you can't spend more than what you budgeted for. So for 2022, I think Richard's already prepared a resolution to carry forward the funds from the audit so that you can amend your budget for 2022, so you won't have, so number one, you'll be in compliant with bringing forward all funds available, but number two, you won't run the risk of overexpending your budget again. And I believe even last year that was in the previous auditor's report also, that he had a comment or a note in the financial statements. He actually put it in the financial statements to show the amounts that were overexpended.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lisa, for the benefit of the board, is there a percentage difference? Because to say you can't go over it all to the penny is really pretty hard. That's a pretty high standard to consider. So is there any kind of variation or fluctuation that
Good point, because it doesn't mean that you can't overexpend in any particular line item. If you budgeted $50,000 for landscaping and you spent $52,000, whatever, that's fine. It's the total, it's the expenses in total. So if the district says they're going to spend $500,000 for fiscal year 22, they can't spend $600,000 without doing a budget amendment and showing the funds coming in. But using the carry forward will help to alleviate that issue, because you'll already have that big pot that you've got there in the beginning. So you won't have to worry about looking at every single line item and making sure it's not $2 over or $2 under, because you've already accounted for that by bringing in your fund balance from the prior year.
But
Does that answer your question?
but in August, the board really should consider looking at the budget and possibly doing an amendment if there's anything that is significantly out of line.
Yeah, definitely. And up everything that needs to be.
Right, before the year end.
Right. New building, everything's taken.
Right.
Yeah, because really that principal payment, Chris and I had this discussion earlier too, anything that's really like a change in the scope of what you intended in the beginning of the year, you should consider an amendment for. So you didn't budget for that additional principal payment last year, and then you guys decided you were going to do that. So anything along those lines, if you're like taking a different track philosophically, basically, that really should cause you to think maybe we need a budget amendment.
We were just looking at saving all the interest with paying the
Right,
loan off
sure,
early,
yeah.
and then but we never thought about amending
No,
it.
and it's completely not a bad
Crossed my
thing
mind.
to do. It's
Yeah.
just something that, because
But if you do something like that, we got to amend the budget.
right,
Okay.
right. And also, I mean, you have in your financial statement report, there are budget to actual statements in there. So you have to present that. And we always present it with two columns, the original and then the amended budget, the actual, and then we show the differences. So, when you see those large numbers swinging on that side, that should maybe give you an indication that you probably should do a budget amendment for this. Okay? So that was the second comment, and like I said, Richard's already got a resolution approved, so we can resolve that one. The next one is just about approving a fixed asset policy. I don't think you guys do a lot of additions and things because you don't have an office, and so the things that are there that are capitalized are stuff that probably has been capitalized for quite a while. But it is a good idea to establish a fixed asset policy where you basically say this is our capitalization threshold. Normally, it's either somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000. The state allows you to use up to 5,000, but usually districts your size, they usually choose more to use around 1,000. So, like, say if the district wanted to buy a vehicle or something like that, you need
computers, all that stuff's on there.
computers. Usually, they're below that $1,000 mark now. So you're not, you could, but that's a good example because a computer is one of those items that you're like, well, should it be capitalized or shouldn't it be capitalized? And so that's where you would go to the policy, because the policy would state we capitalize items with over $1,000 and a useful life of more than 1 year, and so then you would be able to make that determination. And then also with that, you want to establish what the useful lives of those assets would be. So computers will be 3 years or 5 years, and vehicles will be 10 years or whatever. But make that a policy.
Okay, so Lisa, we had replaced a lot of the boards on the fencing, and that was over $1,000, right, Larry?
Yes.
That was like 1,100 and some odd. So that was not really a capital improvement, but it was a capital outlay for replacement of the fencing.
Right.
So would that follow under this? Because
Potentially, but some items like that, you look at like, well, is it really a maintenance item? I mean, if it's something that we're going to constantly be
it's
refreshing, like
yeah.
if you're, when you paint, if anyone's hired a painter lately, we know it's very expensive, but it's not usually something that we consider to be capitalized because we're going to keep repainting. So, and even though it may hopefully last more than a year, it's really more a maintenance type item. But those are things to consider and possibly even put some wording in the policy regarding how to make that decision, or excluding certain items,
because I don't think that fence is in our capital asset list.
No, there were no additions that were made.
Would the filter swamp be considered that too, or no?
No, I don't think
Because
so.
it has like or is that just a maintenance thing? I don't know.
What is it?
We have a filter swamp that cleans the water. That does kind of have there's maintenance with it and everything
Right.
else. But,
Right.
so,
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say that's something that's more maintenance.
okay.
I mean, I would probably try to lean more on a maintenance end of things than a capitalization end of things, just because it's harder. Then you have to put it on the depreciation schedule. You got to track it. You got to depreciate it. All of that.
It's something that's going to be maintained though, so
Right.
just keep it like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. The next item is just about obtaining a credit card. There were several reimbursements to Chris and to Julia prior to Chris for district things that they needed. That then they submitted a reimbursement request. There's nothing really wrong with that. It's just that what has been happening lately, we've seen like little pop-up mini fraud things come up where basically in this electronic world that we're living in and a lot of Amazon purchases and things like that, people are getting their receipts electronically. If you have a higher level of Adobe, it's often very easy to go in and just change amounts and then submit the bill and you get paid. And we actually had a church that the head pastor was doing that, and
Wow.
yeah, and was putting like airline flights, and they were like $300. You put it for $800, and yeah. So we've made this recommendation with several of our clients.
Okay, so Lisa, I'll pause there. I made an inquiry into Bank of America in regards to that matter. There is a state of Florida purchasing card program that the district is eligible for, and so I have the paperwork that you all can submit and take care of with my replacement. So I'm going to give that paperwork to you, Ben, or to whomever wants to hold it, and then you can fulfill this requirement.
Okay.
Because one of the things you don't want to do is not do what you said you were going to do on the response.
Yeah, no,
Right.
yeah. All this stuff needs to be implemented.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up because these, obviously, the Auditor General gets this, and if the comments don't get resolved within, I believe, 2 years, then they start, knocking on your door and
Wondering what.
want to know why, and then you have to prepare an additional response to them. I don't think that that's going to be an issue with you guys at all because these are really pretty mundane type scenarios, so they should be cleared up probably by the next audit. Okay, so the next one here is basically when you have, we're trying to add an additional procedure basically because when you have a small staff, one, that is pretty much doing everything, writing the checks, writing the checks, preparing the bank reconciliation, all of that. There needs to be something else added to it to create more of a separation of duties and some approval process. So one of the easiest things to do is just to have the bank statement, the unopened bank statement, go to someone other than the person that's responsible for doing the bookkeeping, basically, so that one of the board members can get the bank statement unopened, take a look at it, review the transactions, make sure there's nothing crazy on there. I don't know, do your bank statements come with copies of the checks attached? Chris?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so perfect. So, scan through the copies of the checks. And it doesn't have to delay the process of reconcile the bank account because she can still pull the stuff down from the website or whatever, pull it down electronically. That's not going to make a difference. But if someone else is getting the original bank statement and reviewing it, then, that helps to give us more separation in duties. The next comment is regarding loan covenants. One of the things that we have to do because we have to issue a report on compliance type stuff is if you do have debt, we have to look through the debt agreement, see if there's loan covenants that you're supposed to be complying with. And actually, there are, and it's probably a 10-page. The covenants were like 10 pages. I was like, oh dear, because I do not like reviewing debt covenants. One of the most boring things to do. But anyway, so through that, there's several things that you're supposed to be in compliance with, filings and that sort of thing. I got with Chris, she got me some of the documentation that she could find from Julia that was submitted that looked like things were in compliance. And we were fortunately able to shortcut things significantly by having Chris email the bank, and they sent me an email saying that you guys were in compliance with everything, which was wonderful because oftentimes the banks do not like to do that. So I was very happy when I got that email. But so in this, we're basically just saying that that you should make sure that you review those covenants and know what's in there. One of the things that did come up in the covenants was that the records should be open to inspection. And so, since you guys don't have an office, that's a little precarious of a situation. So you probably want to talk about that and make some have some decisions and parameters because there could be all kinds of legal things surrounding that. I mean, we're not, going to make a comment of that. It's kind of up to you guys, but I think it would be wise to just kind of go through there and figure out how you want that handled. And then we're just basically saying to kind of touch base with the bank like Chris did to make sure that they consider you to be in compliance. The next one is regarding a fund balance policy. So generally, special districts have, you want to take the fund balance that you have available and kind of divvy it up into pots. So generally, since you don't get your tax revenue until usually December, governments are really required to have like 90 days of set aside funds so that you can operate, because you need to have that cash flow available to you, because you're not going to see $1 of your tax revenue until generally at least early December. So that would be an item that you would want to consider assigning a 90-day operational fund. Also, like an emergency fund or a disaster fund, something along those lines. And then some governments, some of the special districts we have actually go so far as to assign it every dollar. Some of it they'll call reserve for the next year's budget, basically, but they don't really leave anything there unassigned. So you just want to take a look at that and see that if you've got projects that you know are going to be coming up and you want to set aside for that. Those are things that should be done by a board resolution, but you definitely want to at least do a 90-day operational fund to get you through the point that until you start getting tax revenue. And your engineer could probably help you to determine what he would think would be reasonable for a disaster reserve or something along those lines. Because we all know when we get those nasty storms or floods or whatever, there's cleanup and additional expense that comes as a result of that. So you should have that set aside. And then the last one is just a easy thing. I noticed in going through the QuickBooks records that the checks are handwritten and then the data is being entered into QuickBooks. That just leaves you open for human error, putting in the wrong vendor or the wrong amount. Honestly, the most common is probably putting in the wrong date and then having it throw the check back to like a prior year because you typed, 01 instead of 21, and then you're like, what happened to my check? I can't find it. So we just recommend that if you're using QuickBooks, use QuickBooks. Order the check stock, print them out of QuickBooks. That way there's no, you're not going to have an issue where
double
it's not
entry kind of.
right.
All right, so just so you all know, I've already contacted Bank of America and I've already ordered the check stock. We have enough checks in the current check stock to take us through probably the June bills.
The handwritten.
Right, those.
Okay.
And so we'll have the other check stock in a couple of weeks so that maybe June will it be okay for us to handwrite June's checks using the rest of our check stock? And then so starting July, you'll start using the print three, and it's just basically 3 to a page and not a problem.
Makes sense. Easy fix.
What questions do we have?
I think you really covered it pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so for Ben and Jim and Jennifer, so for me, for what you all need to work with Richard on is determining, and Bill or whoever the engineer will be, is determining that fund balance policy and the fixed asset policy. That's what's going to be kind of on your guidelines between now and the end of the year, because you want to have this done before September 30th.
Before the end of the fiscal.
Right.
Right.
Right, and if you have any budget amendments that you think need to go forward. There are, Chris has some letters for you all to sign. There's 3.
I'll pass them on.
2 copies, 3 letters.
I've got 2 copies in each so that we have a copy for our files.
They're the representation letters, which basically say that I told you the truth, the whole truth, and that's all.
We don't have to fight now.
You didn't look withhold any information. You have no legal lawsuits pending or those sorts. That's pretty much wraps it up. There's one for the audit, one for your investments, because that's another thing that the Auditor General requires, is a whole separate engagement to make sure that you have your funds invested properly. And then one that you read the financial statements.
And then, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in connection with those letters, the board is required to take action, official action by motion to approve the audit.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So a motion to that effect, using that magic word of approve. Motion to
So,
approve.
motion to approve the
Auditor's report.
auditor's report.
Second.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Third.
And you called the question on that. All in favor? Since
For public input?
Yeah, no, sir. Since we got a big crowd, just ask for the vote on that. Just say all in favor.
All in favor.
Very good.
Aye.
Okay. Just in case anybody asks.
Sign these things out.
That's second to
Yeah.
last.
Second to last.
So once Lisa presents the final, then that will get uploaded to the website. So if anybody wants to take a look at it.
Yeah, and Sandy will get with you to get the reports filed with the Auditor General. AFR.
Yep, there you go.
The second to last page.
Chris, how much money do you have in contingency?
We've done this a few times.
I don't think David Cole back in the street.
That's that.
You want them to do the resolution
Sure.
that we did as
Same
well?
time?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Chairman, the other items, based upon the audit presentation and prior discussions with Lisa, I did prepare a resolution for the board to adopt related to the adjustment, the amendment of the budget to address the actual fund balance and cash carry forward that was determined by the efforts of the auditor in reviewing your records. And this resolution, Mr. Chairman, will be a budget amendment resolution. It says, whereas the 2021/2022 fiscal year of the San Carlos Estates Water Control District ended, excuse me, that's not right. The 2020/2021 fiscal year audit ended September 30, 2021. And whereas the district ended the 2020/2022, 2021, I'll get it right in a minute, fiscal year with an actual fund balance of $956,018. And whereas the Board of Supervisors is desirous of amending the annual budget for the 2021/2022 fiscal year to show an adjustment of the carrying forward of the district's 2020/2021 fiscal year-end fund balance in the amount of $955,068, and there was a $950 difference between those two numbers, and that was because your budget showed an anticipated cash carry forward of $950 when in fact it was $956,018 was the number. So that's the $950 difference between those two numbers comes from that prior budget entry. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors that the recitals set forth above are true and correct and form a part of the resolution. Section 2, the Board of Supervisors of the district is authorized to adopt this resolution by Florida law. Section 3, this is the substantive part of the resolution. Section 3, amendment of the budget for fiscal year 2021/2022. This fiscal year. The Board of Supervisors hereby amends the district's budget for the 2021/2022 fiscal year to adjust the 2021-2022 fiscal year beginning fund balance carried forward from the 2020/2021. You can tell I was doing this in a hurry. Fiscal year to be the actual amount of $956,018 instead of the budgeted amount of $950. The budget adjustment required for the fiscal year budget is an increase of the balance forward budget line item in the amount of $955,068, so that the amended or new balance forward budget line item is now a total of $956,018. The section 4 of the resolution is the rescission of all resolutions in conflict provision. It's a standard boilerplate. Section 5 is the severability provision that says any parts of this resolution are severable if they are found to be unenforceable. Section 6 is the scrivener's errors provision of the resolution, and it says that we can modify or make typographical error corrections that do not affect the intent of the resolution. They can be done administratively. And Section 7 says this resolution is to be liberally construed to effect the purposes of the resolution. Again, this is a budget amendment resolution. Then the resolution says the foregoing resolution was offered by Supervisor Blank Line, who moved the resolution's adoption. The motion was seconded by Supervisor Blank Line, and upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. And then there's a place here for us to record the actual votes of the three supervisors. So unless you have questions about the contents of the resolution as I read them into the record, then entertaining a motion to adopt the resolution.
Motion made to adopt the resolution for the 2020 to 2021.
Is made by Supervisor Bogatz. And then is there a second to that motion then, Mr. Chairman? Okay, a second by Supervisor Finazzo. And then when it is put to the vote.
All in favor?
The vote is, let's do a roll call. Supervisor Finazzo is a yes.
Yes.
And Supervisor Bogatz is
Yes.
a yes. And Supervisor Bradford is a yes as well. So it passes unanimously. Then we have a couple of blanks where we'll have it signed at the end of the meeting and we'll have that finished. I will make, because they are scrivener's errors, the date corrections where I got a little tangled up, and then we'll get that fixed, and then we should be okay. We'll get that to Miss Lisa so that she sees that as well as your auditor.
Very good.
Make it part of our record and put it on the website.
Spot.
Thank you for
You're very
all
welcome.
that.
You're very welcome. I think I'm going to scoot out then. If you don't think
Don't
I should
say be
have
safe,
it.
well, no. Thank you very much.
I will, thank you. And also, if you have any questions later, or, you know, you're more than welcome to call. We don't charge for questions. We actually like it when the clients call us and give us, you know, their questions or whatever, because it kind of helps us to know what's been going on. And,
Just put me in for 10 o'clock every morning.
yeah, and will help, you know, for us to figure out the proper treatment of things. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was very entertaining.
Thank you. I'm sure I'm always on.
We would have never known it was Kiki.
Perfect.
Thank you for the input.
Thank you.
I've seen presentations by Mr. Tuscan.
That was
I like
good.
this presentation.
You do like me better because I tend to be a little
Quicker?
Oh, there you go.
Right.
All right, the next item is 24166 Sunny Lane.
Okay, so you have a packet in your packet.
Packet.
And Stephen says that he's reviewed the new permit application in coordination with the board staff. He's reviewed the paper pad, and he's given you his hourly time here. He wasn't sure what to charge for the permit because the permit pad was supplied to them, but he doesn't know what to charge for it. So that's one question that he has. And then if you go to his first email dated May 13th, he identifies that the paver pad lays on a flat portion of the driveway, does not impede the swale. He doesn't consider the installation as clean as it could be, but it isn't installed to be traffic barrier. It's not intended to. So he doesn't see any engineering issues. So this is really for the board to vote on the variance of allowing the paver pad. And he's got a number of issues here.
I have a quick, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask something over on that. Okay. Has any of the other board members driven around the neighborhood and looked at some of the other obstacles in the our right-of-ways? And I can note a number of them, some of which include bricks that are laid down to put other obstacles on, which are obstructions of which we've never addressed in the past. I guess I just wonder, you know, there's where do we just change from a residence they didn't pour a concrete pad, they put down pavers which are easily removable, like some of these other people, have put down obstacles, decorative, and I just got one because they came before the board or they got cited for some reason. I just wondered where we draw our line at. Where do we become saying this is not acceptable, but yet other people have been doing this for years and we don't address it at all?
Or even like an excessive mailbox.
Well, there's one over on Stillwell that happens to be a mailbox thing, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But if a plumber puts a toilet out there next month on a different one, we probably won't accept that. Okay. But the point being is that he put a fire hydrant there. He made it very decorative. It looks very nice. I don't think there's any of us that have a complaint about that. And then we have this other one where and there's more of them. If you drive around the neighborhood, and that particular fire hydrant has bricks underneath it, a pad made to hold it.
Yeah, I know a couple too.
So I guess I just want to figure out when we start doing some of these things, where do we draw that line at? I'm just confused with that. I don't know how to.
I think that's what you all are going to be proceeding in determining your own standards and what you will start to find to be acceptable and not acceptable, and that's the whole process of where we're headed or where you're headed in this
an awful
approval.
line to have to draw because we've got things that have been out there, and if we don't have something, then who knows what we could end up with. The next guy that wants to put paver pads out there might decide he wants to put concrete blocks around them to protect his cans from getting knocked over from the wind. I don't know.
And that's why you have the permit process.
Or a school bus stop.
Yeah.
And everything else.
So
Because we have the access handbook, and I said we're going to do case by case.
I understand that. I was just wondering about the ones that probably have not.
Oh, the existing.
So, it was only a question. I didn't really need to turn it upside down, but I get confused on how I'm supposed to, as a supervisor, respond to these things when I don't know what the past has been and how we address some of those issues, to make sure it's just equal for everybody. I mean, that's all I'd say. Now, whether we go through a permitting process on every single item, and we had talked about this last month at the meeting on where do we begin, if that's what we're going to do. Do we have a rule for it? I mean, we talked about this on other things.
Yes, sir.
How do we get there from here is all I'm saying.
Mr. Purgle, do you have a suggestion?
I have thoughts. The idea of having a standard that is applied, at least as a beginning place, is useful. If you have a standard to apply that's in writing, then everyone will understand what it is. And then when you vary from it, because the board has the discretion to vary even from the standard that you have made, have described, then you will be able to explain the reason for the variance that you have granted. So having a standard in the first place is useful. If you have not had, that's point number one, if you have not had a standard in the past, maybe, or a standard that was implemented, maybe you have a standard but you haven't implemented the standard, would also be a situation. In either one of those cases, then sometimes a government agency will say, you know what, we want to implement a standard that we are going to apply to everyone in the future, but it might not be fair, or maybe it is. It's at the board's discretion to determine, but it might not be fair to apply this new standard to people who have already constructed improvements previously, maybe previously even with the board's permission. So you can say effective a certain date, the standard is going to apply to everyone in the future, and the existing
Improvements.
items that do not meet the standard, whenever they deteriorate to the point where they have to be replaced, then they're not going to be able to replace them as is. They're going to need to meet the new standard and make an application to go through the process.
Is that like a resolution or something you have to draw up?
Well, first the board would decide what you would like to do, and then once you make that decision, then yes, sir, I can draw up. Remember, I did the policy a couple of months ago that addressed some questions that had come up then, and we took care of them that way. So that would be the thing. That I'm not the policy maker. I'm the guy that
Records.
takes everything down and tries to make it fit together and make sense so that it can be used.
I happen to agree with you, and I think the wording that you used was probably just about what we need to do. The only thing that, are we going to have a permit charge for this or not? And if it effectively has something to do with requesting a permission to do that, I hate to think we charge for everything, but we ought to, because of the people who are not requesting things, they shouldn't be subjected to have to pay for the attorney's fees and stuff like that.
That's exactly my
That
point.
should be, we should have a minimum fee that if you want to do something, you should have some sort of
It's
Yeah,
just
I'm
as
all about
bad
the
as that
improving the
right
right of
here.
ways and putting that stuff and making it nice. It looks awesome. You know,
Sometimes
way
it
better.
does, sometimes it does.
The grass isn't dead in that area and it doesn't impede, but we do have to have the engineer inspect it, so there has to be some kind of fee with it. At least that. And
Well,
just whatever. What do you say? 2
I would-
hours?
$400 just
Yeah.
for him to do that.
So yeah,
I
we
would think that if we had, I don't know why everything requires an engineer to look at it.
Or
I would
or a
think
board
that the
member or
the
whatever.
manager or a board member on a lot of these things
Yeah.
can just see that it complies with past things that we're doing and
If you fall on the manager
accepting.
instead.
And everything doesn't have to turn into $1,000 fee,
Yeah.
you know, so.
No, it's a good point that the actual manager could approve it or
That's
disapprove.
something she wants to say.
Yeah, Jim, just for your information, the way we did it in the past is if someone put something in the right of way around their driveway, if it was something that was just aesthetic and it didn't interfere with anything, fine. But and we didn't make a big deal about it, but if somebody put something out there and it obstructed the vision of the drivers or the mowers coming around, so we always kind of looked at things on an individual basis. We really didn't have any policy or look into it. Some things were okay and some things weren't, but we kind of looked at things one at a time, and a lot of the things were fine. But now and then somebody would put something out there and we would just handle it individually and say, sorry, this, and we give them a reason, and it was done like that. It was very informal.
And we never really had any kickback or.
We really never had much of a problem with it.
Yeah.
Now and then something would come up and we just have to deal with it, but like I said, individually. So
Well, we don't want to become a homeowners association. I don't think anybody wants that. But, you know, and if the board is in agreement that we just follow what was done in the past and just
follow case
by case. Mr. Pringle may want to address that, only in the fact that I don't know what leg you have to stand on in the future if you don't have anything. So we are having construction out here by leaps and bounds, and things are changing rapidly out here. And I don't think it's going to be too long. We're not going to see any trees and grass left. But
Mr. Chairman, you could say that, I mean, you could describe certain improvements in the right-of-way that could be done without a permit and without approval in advance. You could say anything that is level with the ground, that like brick pavers of an area that doesn't exceed X number, whatever square feet, to put trash cans or something like that. I mean, you could say improvements like that don't require an application or approval by the district. You could have that exception, in other words, if that was a desire of the board, so that a permit application would not be required.
Well, I thought we addressed this last meeting that we were going to have everybody do an application and then decide whether or not case by case off of that. So at least there was a process coming to the board for that right away.
That's right. And the application process, and what I said was, at this time, there's not a written set of exceptions that does not require a property owner to apply for, use the one permit application that you have. There's one permit application process that you have, one permit application that the district has for the approval of any improvement installed in the district right of way. And so, yes, ma'am, and that's what I said last time was, there's one process and one process only. It's a written application. There's one application fee. That application and the application fee goes to the engineer. The engineer reviews. If there's a variance requested, then the engineer can send it to the board. If the engineer has a question about the approval, if it's not within standard guidelines of the district, then the engineer can bump it to the board. Otherwise, the engineer can approve the requested use of the district right, the requested use and improvements in the district right of way in the standard process. That's
Because I think it eliminates asking forgiveness and then dealing with it, than having a systematic way of asking.
Yeah, that's I totally agree.
And the fee is, application fee is $7.
Well, that's for the driveway.
That's for
That's
driveway.
the driveways, yeah.
Yes, but to my knowledge, that's the only fee.
that's the only fee there.
I'm not aware of any other
Or
fee.
can we put something on there that if it's any other improvement besides the use of access, fee will be determined.
Or pick a number.
Yeah.
If there's not as much engineering review of a pad for trash cans or something like that, then make it $500, whatever the engineer said, yeah, I knew that was
Well,
coming.
looking at this, he's up
Whatever
to
he said.
$360 just
That
to
number, that number.
review for 1 hour a drive time, and then another 1.5 hours, and then the determination. So you're
And
already up to
Is that the engineer?
360.
charging that?
Yeah,
Why can't we go back to what Jim said and why
right.
is the
But I'm just
That's
saying
what
this
we're saying.
step.
Yeah, we'll just send this one here, but yeah, just have the
But depending on what the improvement is, the engineer might have to look at it. So just trying to find a median.
Then we bump it up to that level, you know?
that's why I say it don't have to be on a case by case basis.
No.
Yeah.
It'd be free unless the engineers look at it and charge it.
There you go.
Exactly. Please.
Agree.
I have a question about existing entryways that are at our properties that have been there for over 20 years, not causing any problems to anybody. Do we have to do something with those?
No,
I've been told
no,
before.
not at all.
No.
Those things aren't even on the discussion.
We're just talking if you want to go out and do something new in the right of way, you want to put a statue of your husband out there. We kind of want to know what's going to go on in that right of way.
I'll send a permit anyway.
I disapprove it already.
Your vote doesn't count.
So I just got a philosophical question. So I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish here, create this infrastructure and bureaucracy. So first of all, do you guys really want to be in the business of approving paths for garbage cans?
We just need to know what goes in the right of ways though.
You just have to know.
Because we
Yeah,
had
you
people
know.
laying telephone poles down and restricting water flow and everything else because they wanted to landscape up to them. And that's the biggest issue.
What's the,
It
has
rocks.
there been a problem before? What
Yes.
risk are we
Yes.
missing?
We've had trees planted down in there. We've had a ton of stuff. And we've had to go back and rocks,
who's
landscaping
paying for
rocks.
all this? I mean, when you're setting up an infrastructure, again, I'll call it code enforcement, you can call it something else, but this is a little water district. It's not a city. We have a small budget, and so this could quickly get out of control in terms of the amount of work and the money. I just don't know the risks that we're.
That's why I just think any improvement like that to have our
The manager.
run out and take a peek at it.
And there's no cost.
Yeah, and there's no cost at all. That's what we're trying to establish.
And then the other thing is the whole.
But they just gotta
Nobody's gonna know about it. Like nobody knows about any of this existing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the biggest
And
problem.
so now we have another situation where every meeting, you know,
You gotta come and
we
ask for
spend
forgiveness.
3 hours arguing about
Yeah.
stuff that nobody knows, and they're not going to know next month or next year. They're not going to know. So
I don't even think a lot of people know this exists.
No,
you know,
they
the
don't.
board
Yeah.
and the meetings and everything that goes on, and I don't really know how to, make that apparent.
Yeah.
There's no real one way to do it, and especially with the way our neighborhood is growing,
And people
this
move
is
in and
only
out.
going
Yeah.
to continue to be an issue. I mean, it's not going to get better.
And
It's
the real
going to get
estate
worse.
people do not tell people.
No.
They
Yeah,
just
and they don't even know they're
exist.
paying extra taxes because they're in a water control district or a driveway, or they have no idea. But I don't know how to educate that or do
The
that.
whole community.
They say you can
Give
do
me ideas, I don't know, maybe signs, that's what I do.
That's all they care about.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Where are we at with this?
What do you want to do with this one? We asked them to do a permit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So are you okay with it?
There should be a fee attached to it. I think that if there is, it has to be minor, a $50, $25 fee, period. And that goes, it's not an engineering. It should not.
It should never go to engineering.
Unless the manager, at the manager's discretion, brings it before the board and says, they built this high hump thing that they can't mow around, they can't do this, they can't do that. Then it becomes something we have to contend with. But
So do we need to
it is
change the access
a
standards
event.
handbook? You would need to change the
Created,
access.
that's the exception.
If we could do
It's
that.
just getting so complicated.
And then just have it approved, or if there's any concern, then the,
regulations of bureaucracy are very, very complicated.
Okay, so then,
then
I know that
In this
there have been one permit, possibly two, where someone's building a pool and they have to go
temporary
to,
driveways?
yeah, something, I don't know. Get the engineers involved, and there's a $50 fee for that that's been charged and assessed so that they can make sure that they're not going to do damage to the infrastructure. But I think that's a other fee that's been somehow must be in the handbook because they're charging it, but I don't know how it's being charged.
And I'd like to see even in the future, that could be handled by the
We're still home.
just to make sure the swale was returned back to its normal state by the manager.
It's not an engineering issue.
Yeah, as long as they go back and there's grass there, why does an engineer have to drive all the way down and look at that?
One thing, the only thing I would say to the contrary to that is the homeowners don't always take the manager word or direction and say one thing and then go, I'm not doing that. And then they don't do it. And then you have to get the
Code
because
enforcement or the engineer.
right.
And that'll just
I mean that's the guy
basis,
that's the
though,
guy
too.
that's on Whippoorwill. I mean, to be perfectly honest.
Can I ask another $64,000 question?
What's that?
I'm sorry, but this is really bugging me. Okay, so you find out, so he didn't do a permit, they did do a permit, it's in violation.
The variation.
What are you gonna
The
do?
variance.
By what authority do you have to make me rip up my, garbage can pad outside? What are you gonna do to make me rip that up if you don't like it?
I believe we can go as far as removing the pad ourselves and then back billing your property and putting a lien on your property. If you don't want to pay it.
In the district's right
I don't
away.
think so.
If it's in the district right away.
It constitutes a trespass in the district's right of way, and it can be removed
Yes.
ultimately.
You have to have a reason.
Yes, sir. And the reason is the district controls all improvements constructed in the district's right of way. And because they have that authority, then with that authority comes the ability to enforce that authority within the district's right of way. So they can actually require the removal of any improvements constructed.
So that's pretty drastic action for the things we're talking about here. Somebody plants a tree in there, take the tree out.
Oh, that's 9 times out of 10 we talk to them and ask them, and then they're like, "Oh, we didn't even know this was a water control district." They pick up their tree and they move it, and it's no big deal.
I'm sorry, you're just setting up a whole bureaucracy to do things that are just ticky-tack risks. To the
Well, that's what we're just trying to leave it up to the manager now.
Actually, it's already
in place.
It's in place now. It's just not been carried
In every
out.
case we've ever had, but I know when Judy was on the board, and anyone that was encroaching on the right of ways, they were always like, "Oh, dude, no problem. We'll move this or we'll do that," and it was just
So when you have a law, again, I'm going to keep pushing this. When you have a law, isn't there an obligation to publish that law to the people affected by that law?
It would be placed in the website. Yes, sir. And it's
Nobody
also-
knows about the website.
But it's in the website because it's in the Access Standards Handbook.
Okay, I was
Did
here
you-
last
let me ask
month.
you a
Nobody
question.
knew about this system until last month.
When was the last time that you read the Federal Register or the Florida Administrative Procedures notice, where they notice rules that are being implemented by all the state agencies are all contained in one location, and nobody ever reads that?
On the city. The city said.
Or the
make it
city,
right.
That's the
I don't have any,
rule of law.
so we have control over this to some extent. I can't go to Tallahassee and affect changes. I can't go to DC, really.
The idea is that you can, but
But
when
I'm
you-
here now expressing
when
my
you
view that we
vote
should not set up
at
this
that
bureaucracy.
location.
we're not setting anything up. I don't know why you think we're up here.
Take it away
setting
then.
something. What are we taking away?
Nobody's
A Florida statute? We can't.
Every month we have a room full of people who didn't know about it, didn't comply.
Well, now they're educated, and now they know. I don't know what else to tell you. There's
There's
nothing I can
17
do.
of us here.
Unless you stop every car coming in here and say, "Hey," and you educate them, you're never going to beat this. It's just a revolving door.
We
Man,
have no
in
plan.
3 or 4 years, this whole board will be new, and we're starting all over again. Trust me. And then you're going to move, and whoever buys your place, did they ever tell you whenever you bought that this is a water control district? There's a board meeting every third Tuesday.
No.
Anything? No.
So I've
So
spoken to people who lived here for 20 years. They didn't know.
exactly. Yeah. Why you got a landing strip in
I've
the middle
lived
of
here
your
almost
road?
35 years, and I knew about it when I first moved here.
So I mean, I don't know how to correct
You
it.
search,
And we're
you
just we're trying to make it
understand where
easier,
you're living.
trying to put it up. Most of this stuff so we don't have to run through an engineer and pay for it all. Is my 2 cents on it. But we have to enforce certain rules.
And a lot of it's the homeowner's due diligence to look at their tax bill and see that there's an assessment for a water district to understand there's some control with regards to the properties that are around this community.
Good answer.
But there's no website on the property bill.
You get a
You
tax
click on
bill.
it, goes, you click on the website, on the tax thing, it says right to the St. Paul's website.
Yep.
Okay, so what are we doing in this
Exactly.
case? We gotta button this one up.
It's not
Yep.
So there are two.
What is your opinion on it?
Just decide, I'll go with you.
So,
Me, I'm happy with what they
That's
did.
fine.
Richard
I think
has,
it's-
Richard
I'm sorry,
has,
Oh,
Richard.
please,
so you can approve the request
okay,
and allow the case to just move ahead. Allow the request to be approved.
Motion
and just
made.
Move ahead.
let's do that.
Do you want to charge a fee? Or let it go?
I would just let it go in this case.
All right. So you're approving the request with no permit fee
Yes.
required. And is there a second?
And I like to say in the future, supervisor, whoever it be, could approve it. All this.
The manager.
The manager.
Manager.
There you go.
Well,
Not supervisor.
first of all, we've got to get a
Okay.
second on this.
Second.
Also, third, aye, whatever.
All right.
So
And-
then-
So in order to do that, you have to change the Access Standards Handbook to do what you want to do.
Okay.
if you want to have any second set of standards that apply to a concrete pad or paver pads for the garbage cans or anything
We just lump
else,
it into any improvement in the right of way?
right now, like I said before, you've only got one set of guidelines, one set of standards, and that says you have to file an application, you have to pay the application fee, the same as if you were applying for a driveway connection. If you want to do something different, then the board's decision needs to be made, a board decision needs to be made to do something different, and then we can do that.
Okay.
But right now, you have one standard and one application and one application fee that applies to any and
So
all
we could make a
uses
second
of the
one.
district right of way.
We can make a second one, or should we addend that
If
one?
you want to make if the board needs to take action, if you want to go, if you want to have a different standard that applies to other uses, things that are like this request, then you say that's what you want to do, and I'll try to write that up for you.
That's what
Right
I
now,
want.
you got one standard, one application fee, one application.
Let's please move ahead with that.
Okay.
Does somebody want to give him a list, or do you want?
I would just say any improvement, we kind of have to know about.
He's
If
gotta
we
have
need
some
the right of
guidance.
way. And if there's any cost or anything with it, that'll be determined case by case,
So I could say something like,
depending on the improvement.
notwithstanding everything else that we've said about the application for a driveway permit and all that stuff, if a property owner wants to place a minimal improvement,
That's what I was going to say.
at ground level with nothing elevated in the district right of way, less than 10 square feet in size, I'm starting to make up things,
Yes.
but less than 10 square feet in size, then you can make a different application to the district, because the district still wants to know every improvement that's in the district right of way. There's a different abbreviated, simple application. It'll be reviewed by the manager of the district, and there will be no fee initially for that application.
Yes.
Is that something kind of sort of what you're thinking, or I'm not a thinker.
Yeah,
I'm just a
I'm
writer.
good, personally, I'm good with that too. The only reason this all got started was because we ended up with this thing with the paver pad, and we needed to deal with it.
And you got a rule that says you have to deal with everything, every improvement in the district right of way is subject to the board's approval.
Okay.
That's what the rule
Yeah.
says.
And then if they could just write it, even simple writing with a small little drawing of where it's going to be, simple drawing, and present it.
All right, so I will send a letter to these people, tell them that their permit has been approved, and
good
they're
to go.
done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let's save the marriage.
Okay. So then the next.
Are you okay, Mr. Pringle?
I'm writing feverishly.
I don't think David Klopak came in today,
No, I don't see it.
so we'll.
Skip that one.
Oh, can we make a decision?
Well, you can't because he hasn't done the. You don't have the permit application
Oh,
that he was
I don't
supposed
think
to.
we don't even know what he wants to do yet, really.
So you want to make a motion to table that to the next meeting?
Please.
So Ben made the motion.
Second.
Jennifer second. Jim's thirded.
Aye.
0.
Just to,
Please.
maybe it doesn't make any difference, but why would you table anything, or why would you even include anything on the next agenda? Table it and include it if there's not even an application in place.
I thought he was gonna show up tonight with the application.
Well, I understand that, but
He was.
did he have to say that I'm going to show up with an application?
He kind
Before
of
he even gets on the
insinuated
agenda?
that last meeting he was gonna come back. I thought he was gonna send it to us in the middle of the month.
But then you don't need to table it because he hasn't done anything.
Well, he's already done. It's an ongoing issue that's been going on since early this year,
Gotcha.
where he made an improper improvement in the right of way.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing is the EDR Natural Resources Stormwater and Wastewater 20-year plan. That is a report. If you remember back in November,
I can see emails about this.
October 28th, I brought it in the November meeting. We had the state of Florida's got this new program that they want done that has to be submitted to Lee County by June 30th. In the meeting, in November meeting, Bill said that his office would do that, but he was confusing it with the NPDES permit because that was what he had just finished talking about. So no action was taken, and so when we got when they brought it back up about it because it's due next month, they have no direction from the board to complete that plan. So they're looking for the board to give them direction to do the plan and complete the template that's required by the state of Florida to be submitted to Lee County by June 30th. I've already given them the financial information that was part of that report, which is a lot of it pie in the sky projections based on inflation and whatnot. Mark Howell, who does most of those, the NPDES, said that he thought it would take him 3 to 4 days to do the template. It's a very involved, and I think I sent the information to everyone last month, an email with the template attached to it.
I remember
Oh,
seeing it.
yeah,
I don't know if it was last
that
month.
thing I gotta fill out?
Yeah, that whole big thing. So we don't have to do the wastewater part of it because we don't have sewers, but we do have to do the stormwater plan. So the board has to decide, are they willing to have Morris Depew do this so that it gets submitted by the time that it's supposed to be submitted?
I think yes. That's my personal thought. It needs to get done. We only got a couple of weeks to get it done, and they're already
Agreed.
know everything.
There's no stormwater runoff to check.
Yeah, as of now,
It's
but
all dried
it's
up,
well, it's just a plan.
stagnant
It's our
water.
20-year plan of what you know. So
The state's trying to come up with some 20-year initiative.
I know, but if there's no water moving through the system, it's naturally going to be in a bad state, sitting there stagnant.
So do I have to make a motion?
Yeah.
Motion made to have Morris Depew do the EDR National Resource Stormwater 20-year projection plan. If it's something we have to do through the state, there's nothing we can really do around it.
Is there a second? Second.
Aye.
Third. Jimmy, third it?
Aye.
Okay.
So it has to be done in 2 weeks.
It's got to be submitted to Lee County by June 30th, but he can have it done in time. All right. Stillwater guardrail repair. I think I gave everybody, I think. And I don't have my copy because I didn't make enough copies. Okay.
You
We-
accidentally stapled on the back of something, so that's the second
That
copy.
must be the,
Yep.
that's why. Okay, so I submitted to State Farm an estimate based on the quotes that we had gotten, and then I threw a line item in there for the engineering time because I didn't have anything, and then I threw in something for administrative time, which will probably get rejected. So we might as well just take that right off the cusp of it. They said, basically State Farm said, we need to itemize bill and we don't understand why you need an engineer. And I said, well, we have the canal slip that has to be, the engineer has to coordinate the work. So what I'm looking for now, because we're getting so close to rainy season and the contractors are available, we've already gotten from State Farm, not in writing, but we've already been told by State Farm that the driver is 100% liable and the insurance policy will pay. Go ahead and approve the quotes that we have so we can get the work scheduled. And then once this work is scheduled and coordinated through Morris Depew, then once all that's done, then we can submit those paid bills to State Farm for reimbursement.
What do you need us to do?
Approve to have the work contracted and have Morris Depew coordinate the repair efforts.
Sounds like a plan to me. Motion made.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there a third? Okay, so then what I will do is contact Morris Depew, tell them that the board has approved these quotes and to begin coordination to get the repairs done so that we don't lose that slope.
Excuse me. And so what we were talking about is State Farm apparently was the insurance company that insured it, and they're covering.
They insured the car that hit the rail.
Okay. And they're going to cover the rail and the damage that the car created.
Right, because it's property under their property damage. I was trying to get something pre-approved from them saying, yeah, this is within the scope of the policy, but they didn't. They were just not being really cooperative, and they wanted me to send more pictures, and I sent more pictures. But we just got to get it done. It's been going on since January 24th.
Good. I just wanted to be clear what was said. I'm not like,
Yeah. The other item is something that you may or may not have because I'm not sure I put it on the update report because it was really just discovered in the last.
Here's in an email.
Okay. On Bonita Bill, between Red Robin and Gerald's property at the end of Bonita Bill, there is a big washout where the sediment has collected at the bottom of the canal. Someone's put pavers in there trying to probably slow the erosion. There's a big cabbage palm right there too. Stephen went out and looked at it. He agrees it needs to be fixed and probably before we hit rainy season. I have no idea what that repair is. They haven't done anything to get any contracts or ask for any bids from anybody to do it. Gerald says it's been there for at least a year, he thinks, maybe. But it's a pretty big washout, and it's starting to collect into the canal. So they need to have someone come in and scoop up the sediment from the canal and then rebuild that berm.
Yeah,
and then probably put
rip
riprap on it.
Past too. Yeah, they put river rock to stabilize it. And
Yeah.
Do you know who we used for any of that? To get bids? I swear it was it Elite or I think it was Elite that did the last ones.
So basically, the decision is, one, yes, we want to make the repair, and then two, do we want to have Morris Depew start the process to get the bids to make the repair?
Why is it that Morris Depew, we pay him a quite large sum of money every time he advertises for things for us? So I'm just wondering why every time we do things, he has to be the one advertising for them. Why? I mean, he might be the engineer that has the final stamp on the project, but it's just like the culvert pipes. He doesn't put them in, he doesn't install them, he only approves them once they're done. So if we have a project like this, why is it we don't just find a contractor that can do it, and whether we want to bid it depending on the amount of money we're dealing with, then why don't we hire the person and have whoever our engineer is inspect the work?
That's been the process in place. I don't have an answer to that.
Can we do that?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
There's some instances where the work needs to be bid out under state law.
Sure.
And then, so if we cross that threshold.
Is that a dollar amount?
Sometimes it's based on work, sometimes it's based on dollars. The manager, I mean, you could start, instead of starting with the engineer, you could start with the manager doing the initial determination. I don't think we've got a policy we may have. I'm not aware, I'll say it that way. I'm not aware of a policy that says when you are going to do certain procurement procedures are going to kick into place. Many places have a policy that says if the purchase of services is less than X number of dollars, then the manager can call 3 people in the business and get 3 quotes over the phone and pick the best one and make a decision. That kind of procurement type policy would describe a lot of these situations that you're talking about. But I'm not aware that you have such a policy.
Judy, didn't we have something like that where the manager, like Julie Roberts, could make a
Purchasing
under $2,000,
decisions.
$5,000?
I think we raised it to 5.
I think, yeah. It was,
And I know she did because we did some patching out here on the road.
and she could
And
approve it.
it was just basically approved with the amount of money that she had, and she authorized the work to be done.
Now, the big thing is the scope of work. Is it over $5,000
Let's
or not?
just, till we make a phone call, we probably won't know, but we can authorize the manager to go up to that amount.
Yeah.
With the work completed.
How about we do that?
And it almost sounds like there may be a policy in place.
I don't think it's written. I don't know that it's written.
Well,
There was a
Julie,
motion way back, what happened was, originally it was like 2,500. And then everything increased, and I think it was around the time of Irma. It was increased to 5,000. So it was probably, if you look back, there's probably a motion or something there.
well,
Since I was been on the board, this is in the last 6 years. I remember when it went to 5, and it was because of that storm and stuff, and it was.
Right.
And
And there are additional levels. I've seen situations where the procurement purchasing policy said, if it's up to $5,000, the manager can just make the decision. If it's between $5,000 and $10,000, then she needs to make 3 phone calls and pick the best one for the district. At least 3 phone calls. If it's between 10 and 15, then she needs to get a written quote from 2 people, at least 2 written. I mean, there's a whole stepping process so that as the work becomes more expensive, the effort to competitively select or bid the work out becomes more involved. So fire districts use those a lot, and so it's just that kind of a stepping kind of a process.
Is that something we have to adapt?
If you want to do it on a regular basis, if you want to just say annually the manager can make purchases up to $5,000 without bringing an item to the board, that's a motion. That's one time a year. Do that, and you're maybe when the same time that you adopt the annual budget or something like that. You can do it then.
Okay.
If you wanted to have put something in place that just is in place until you change it, then that would look more like a policy, and that would be maybe when you did the stepping thing that I talked about.
Okay.
Each layer would have a little bit more involvement, purchasing, procurement type activity involvement as the prices go up. So you can do that. And again, the fire districts have those, and I've actually written some of those before for fire districts.
I have no problem, because I noticed that Busy Bee has really broken up, got a big old hole.
Yeah.
Right there at the corner where the trucks have just broken up that concrete.
Yeah, for exactly where you're trying to
there's a
apron.
huge one there.
Yeah.
And so I was going to call Mike to bring in some stuff and just fill that hole so that somebody doesn't pop a tire or something there or twist their ankle. But when you're dealing with this situation being your canal slope, to me that's more of a specialized type of repair as opposed to, I need a sign, we have a pothole that needs to be filled, or there's ruts in the road. I mean, this is a very specialized type of repair that
kind of does have to be a standard.
Yes.
If the slope's too great or if it's too,
Yeah, so
And normally an engineer is.
I was gonna say this would be an engineer.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Normally, when there's that kind of.
I haven't seen the washout. If we'd had a picture or something, the people were.
You sent one, didn't you?
There was, without losing my recording.
I mean, for me, I don't know whether we're just talking about a pothole, whether we're talking about
We're talking about a deep
washout.
washout. Now, part of it, thankfully for the sable palm that's there, that's probably holding up part of the side. But when Stephen went down there, he said there's quite a bit of sediment down on the ground at the bottom of the canal.
You don't remember what it was called, do you? Is it a dump grade? I think we just have to get an engineer to do this one though. Or do you have something?
The angle's not really good, but it's here, there, there. So see, these are the pavers that are in there, filling it in, and it goes all the way down. But it's not really good.
And that's the actual missing right here.
Right there.
That all needs to be rebuilt back up.
Yeah. And I found a smaller one further up the road on Bonitaville, but that one looks like it's been there for a while, and there is some sediment on it, but it's not an ongoing washout situation. Now, Gerald didn't think this thing's gotten worse, but I think I like to steal pictures. If we,
May I look there for a minute?
yeah, it's right between,
Yeah, it's not affecting the road as of yet.
no. Well, it's right there to the edge of the road.
I see where it's at.
Yeah.
But
It's
the appearance there is that
it's a little down below it. You're right.
the actual water doesn't run
Right.
over the top of it yet.
No.
It's
It's going down into the canal.
and Gerald said it's been there for how long?
He says he wasn't 100% sure. He thought
Looking at
close
the
to a
growth,
year.
looking at the growth and stuff in it, I happen to agree with Gerald on that.
Yeah.
I think I don't see it as an emergent repair. I think we ought to take a look at it.
Okay. We can wait.
I'd like to go look
I
at
wouldn't
it.
mind looking too.
Okay.
Okay, so we will take no action on that.
It's got grass growth on the walls and stuff.
Yeah. Let's go see. And then with all the rocks in there, you can't really see what's going on.
Right.
Okay, so your motion is to look at it later on and not take any action at this time.
Not take action. The next one's Morris Depew.
Before we start that, do you want to go ahead and finish 9360 Bonitaville? Since we're talking about permits and stuff.
Sure, what is that?
This is the one with the lady with the driveway.
Okay.
She did submit.
Oh, that's right.
She did submit an application, and she paid the $750.
There's an engineer's recommendation and notes.
It has all that. Yeah. I saw it had the different layers of rock and everything else and whatever.
A base and a sub-base and material was recommended by the engineer.
Perfect. We could just approve that.
Okay.
Prove it.
I second.
So do they need to do anything?
The motion was to follow the engineer's recommendation.
Yeah.
On the construction materials for the road extension. Right.
And I seconded it.
Who made the motion?
Jennifer.
And then Ben, and then Jim, me third. Okay. So back. Let's go back to Bonitaville. We have Ben making the motion. Who did the second?
Which one?
For the
Oh, the
Bonitaville repair.
I'll second
And Jen. Okay. Now you can go for it.
Morris Depew.
Okay. I put a motion on the floor at the last meeting that we replace him, and I stand with that.
A second.
I would.
But we need to review the bill.
Yeah. I don't know. It's through. So he just has to finish out the existing work, and now we got to start a process to find a new engineer.
Yes, sir. Because of the type of services being professional engineering services.
We can't just fire.
Well, there's actually two parts with regard to selecting a new engineer. The process to go through is to do a request for qualifications process. where you ask the engineering firms to tell you their qualifications to do your particular work. You would tell them a little bit about the district and the services that would be provided, and then you would ask them, I'm not shelling it, but you would ask them to provide you with a statement of their qualifications and
The scope of work.
yes, the work that they would, yes, sir, the work that they would provide for you as a 298 district.
The ones, go ahead.
And then you would give them a response deadline. They would give you responses. Firms that are interested. I think I said at the last meeting that if you know of someone, an engineering firm who might be interested in doing work for the district, you can call them and tell them the district has released this request for proposals or whatever it ends up being. And if you want to respond, go to the district's website. The document's there, and go to the district's website, and the deadline to respond is X, and whatever that is, let them know, and then get as many responses as you can and select from that list, or not select from that list. If you're not happy with all the responders, then you can reject them all.
Okay.
Well, who's going to do all this? Because
okay,
one second, just so you know, motion was made by Jim, seconded by Jennifer, and I'm a nay. I didn't want to go through with it, but it's through. So, but now we're going to start a new process, and we've got to deal with these two. But
I was going to ask if you didn't mind. I would like to take that on as being able to talk. But we have more we have to do here, though. Before we can do that, we have to, number one, run an ad, which I believe Mr. Pringle would run, and then if we want to outline the period of time, which probably should be trying to complete it by the next board meeting in June, which we haven't established that yet, which we need to do.
Yeah.
And then if the board doesn't choose a new person at that time, as long as Bill will stay on month to month, then we'll keep him month to month until such time as we find a replacement.
Right. Which I
would say to you that Bill is welcome to put in a new application for the job based on, because part of the reasons for this is just he's downtown Fort Myers and everything he charges for starts down there. We have firms right here in the city of Bonita Springs who work for the city of Bonita Springs, and they work on other water management districts. They're probably equally as qualified as Bill has been in the past.
I agree. Comments?
I just want to say something from a personal point of view. In working with Morris Depew for 14 years, I just want to say I happen to know that Morris Depew is one of the highest regarded firms in the state of Florida. Also, the fact that they designed the system that we have here and are so terribly familiar with it, that is an incredible asset. And any new person coming in is going to have a big learning curve. And
is that why the roads have been flooded for 18 months?
Please? Could I finish, please?
Is that why the roads have been flooded for 18 months if he's so great?
The reason the roads are flooded is not, there's a lot of history behind that, and it was the decision of the board back 20, if you want to go back 20 years, that's history.
That's kind of irrelevant since the board's already voted him out.
That is not anything, the engineer is at the direction of the board at the time the project.
Which they've already voted to remove.
The project and that's right, but I'm just
irrelevant.
That's fine. But I think I have a right to say this. At the time it was done, we knew that every road wasn't going to be dry, every backyard wasn't going to be dry. We were going to use what we had at the time. We didn't want to spend $100 million. There was a budget, and so we were presented different plans and different options, and the board at the time made the decision and directed the engineering firm to go ahead and do it that way. Yes, we have places there are water. We live in a swamp. There's also places all over the city of Bonita that get water. That's beside the point. But getting back to what I was saying, it is an asset to have someone that is so familiar. We've had a good relationship in the past. You've had a negative, and I understand that you've had a problem here. I totally see it, and I agree there's a problem. But I also know when we had problems with previous vendors, we didn't always fire them. We let them fix the problem. And I know there was several that we did have problems with, mainly mowers.
Yeah.
And you probably remember too, Ben. But I'm just saying, we've had a good relationship over the years, and the fact that he's in Fort Myers isn't far away. I mean, I must have several of my daughters that are in Fort Myers.
It's 1 hour
Depends
billing
on where you
in
go, but I'm
both
just
ways.
saying, it's, you're not talking like it's in Fort Lauderdale, where we did actually consider a previous attorney that was gonna be from Fort Lauderdale. So I'm just saying, Fort Myers isn't that far away, but I know it's your decision, I'm out of it, but I just wanted to state from experience, it has been a wonderful relationship, they've been there for us, and just the fact that they designed the system and are so familiar with, I just think that's a big plus, so that's all I'm gonna say.
He was invited to put in an application. He's gonna compete with other people.
So just on the flip side, so it's great that he's familiar, but fresh eyes would be helpful too.
So, Mr. Pringle, what do we need? What do you need from us? Just, you're gonna start it and Mr. Bradford's gonna take it from there, or, because you have to advertise first, I guess?
Yes, sir.
And you'll coordinate with him?
Right, there's a, if the board wants to say that Supervisor Bradford will oversee the work and coordinate with me, and we'll get a document prepared that interested engineering firms can respond to. If you are going to ask that they respond early enough so that you can review their responses at a June board meeting, first I would say to try to make the meeting as late in, you haven't noticed a June meeting, so you can make the meeting in June whenever you want to, or you could even make it in, early July.
What's the latest in June that you're gonna be available?
I'm gonna be out the 27th, right around the 27th of the month.
Which is the last Monday, the last week.
So, yes, sir, so that last week. The week before that.
It's still the third Tuesday.
Yes.
Well, we don't have to have it on a Tuesday. We can make it a Friday or a Saturday if we wanted to.
My point is that we're going from not having any of the documentation done at this moment to wanting to have documentation done, finished, released, noticed,
bids,
and responses in all before your meeting, and give you time to also review the responses before the meeting happens. So that's pretty compressed.
Is that even logical? Or should we just shoot for July?
It
just keep
is.
Mr. Morris on for another month, and if anything would happen.
It is a very compressed time. It will be.
I just don't even see vendors getting back to you.
I would say this, Ben, that we proceed forward, we have our meeting, and if we cannot meet that compliance, we will move it a month out, okay, or whatever it happens to be.
And you could say that Supervisor Bradford has the ability, once I get everything pulled together, to either
if it happens, great, but
do it, or nope, it's too short of a time, roll it to the July meeting.
Okay,
so
how do I word that motion, and let's make it?
That would be a motion to proceed with a competitive selection and request pricing if we can under the statute, and authorize Supervisor Bradford to oversee it and put it for the June meeting if we can. And if not, then Supervisor Bradford can roll it to the July meeting.
Motion made.
I'll second.
Aye.
Okay.
We'll put a notice in the paper, we'll put it on the website. Anybody that anybody knows who you want to call, we'll let Morris Depew know that they can respond, and as well, and that'll cover all the bases, A to Z that I can.
I'm doing that because I don't feel like we had an opportunity coming here tonight to justify what happened. So therefore, we'll keep him on the slate and give him that opportunity.
The next item is the engineer selection process. That's been covered. We're all good.
You just did that right now.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's covered.
The earlier motion, if I could just make sure, related to Morris Depew, I think it is important for the district to have an engineer of record, to continue to have an engineer of record. And so until the board makes another selection, can I just confirm that Morris Depew is still the engineer of record for the district until you select another engineer?
Yeah, that's what I want to
on
say.
that basis.
Definitely.
Yes, okay. All right, so that was a part of the action that was taken. That's all.
Gate request standards?
Do you want to push that off?
I think that needs to get pushed off. There's nothing that I don't want to make a decision on that right now.
Okay.
So when would you like to table it, Jim?
I think we're really looking at October.
Do you want to make a motion?
I think we've got enough going on between now and then.
Yeah, we got engineers. We
don't need to be
Yeah.
working.
Your position. We got so much going on here.
So-
all this little stuff is just killing us.
Motion?
I make the motion.
Table to October?
Aye.
Jennifer second? And Ben third? We had Brad Gallagher as the next one with his gate request, but you submitted the gate through the use and connection, huh?
It's on the table.
No,
I gave it to Jennifer.
Any requests are gonna fall in line with whatever we decide in October, so.
His application's on
It's right here.
But isn't that one that needs to go to, that would go, the process is that goes to Morris Depew for review with the
There's no need
700?
to do that. We haven't decided on what we're gonna do.
Yeah, because that's the.
That's gonna be an October decision.
So why don't you hang on to this, Brad?
Isn't that the current process now, though?
It is the current process now,
Then
with the
we're gonna take
750, oh, I guess that's 750 feet.
Yes, it would be, you haven't created any exceptions to the rule at this point, so it would be a standard application fee, standard review by the engineer, standard bringing it to the board for approval process. That's the one that you have approved now. The other one is the one that I'm going to work on putting together for the future so that the manager can review and approve applications for other types of work. But you don't have that on the books at this moment.
That would have to go to Morris and Depew.
Yeah, with a
There
$750,
is
with a $750 fee. So do you want to
Before we can
wait?
get this process, or you can wait a minute and try to get this other process in the works. Might make it a lot easier.
Potentially cheaper.
Well, I'm just confused why I was told to bring tonight, so.
I just asked
Nobody
you to
said,
bring
nobody told you to bring it
This
tonight.
is the fourth month that I've been here in a row.
We can turn it down. We can just vote no.
I understand that,
Okay.
but you also just approved a paper pad one that was turned in tonight too, so I'm just trying to figure
No,
out
that
where
was turned into the engineer's office.
And the engineer kicked it down to us.
So this hasn't been gone to the engineer's office yet. That's the process. So do you want it to go to the engineer's office with a permit fee of $750, or do you want to wait until they come up with their plan?
Again, I'm just asking because this is now the fourth month that I've been here with the gate request. So I'm trying to figure out that I'm not going to be here next month
Nope.
for the same gate request.
You've got a fence line that runs parallel with your road, and if you want your property blocked off, you can you can put a gate there. You know, if you're concerned about people getting in and out of your property.
I'm just trying to get clarification because, like I said, I've been here 4 months in a row asking for the same gate.
We're trying to make this gate request standard. We got so many other irons in the fire right now. We could look at it in the future, but right now we can't make another standard for right now. Like I said, in October, if you want to look at it, I'll be more than happy to. Hopefully we'll have a city man, or we'll have a new manager, new engineer. We can move on from there. 9360 Benita Bill, what's that?
We already did it.
Oh, done?
Do you want this back or not?
I don't need it.
Do you want me to send it to the engineer or not?
Sure.
Okay, you need a $750 permit fee to go with it.
I thought they were going to wait till October.
Not if you send it to him.
Not if I send
He's
it
gonna
to.
charge you.
Not if I send it to the engineer. So you'll pick it up.
The tuck gate, we're good?
I don't know, are we?
Nothing happened.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do with it?
Perfection is
I
required.
think it's gonna fall into the same
Same
thing.
thing with that gate there too?
Table it to October?
Sure, I guess until we get a standard for these gates, then there really much we can do.
Huh?
Okay, so who wants to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Aye.
Third? So what do you want me to put for the Brad Gallagher request? Request withdrawn?
I'll just table till October.
Table to October? Got a motion?
Wait a minute. Just, Mr. Gallagher, please, to make this simple, take your application back. Let the board decide what the standards are gonna be, what the application is gonna be, and then you can submit the application once that's established. Because otherwise, if you leave the application on the table now, then it's gonna be out of the norm and it's gonna create more effort that really.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Pringle, for that clarification, because again, there was a little bit of confusion, because during the email that I got, I was told to submit this packet.
To the engineer.
Right, so that's the reason
the
why I came
engineer.
tonight with the packet, so thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
All right, so it's withdrawn then.
Yes, ma'am.
Request is withdrawn.
Yes, ma'am. For now, that's right. Not a pending application now.
All right, let's, if we can jump one ahead and just add this meeting whenever it's convenient for Mr. Pringle. So we're definitely gonna need you at that one.
Calendar.
And you don't have to necessarily set that meeting date tonight.
Okay.
We can
Just say we're gonna add it.
Yes, as a part of the competitive selection process. You've already said you want to have a meeting. We'll pick a date that works for everybody,
Okay.
the best possible, and then that's the one that we'll notice.
Awesome. Is that okay?
That's fine with me. If we need,
If you could-
we need 14 days for advertising the meeting going.
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually goes in the paper for 7 in advance of the meeting, but to make sure that we satisfy the news press is typically required a 7-day advance notice. There are occasions when I can get it done in less than that, like at the 10-day mark, but we're going to know way before that if this is going to happen or not, because if we're not able to get the RFQ, if it looks difficult to get that competitive document pulled together, then this is going to roll to the July meeting. That's the other question, by the way. If this competitive selection item rolls to the July meeting, do you want to have a June board meeting?
I think we should have the June board meeting.
Anyway?
Yeah, I think it's definitely would.
Okay.
Trying to still get a
The only
manager.
difference is then we'll be on the regular third Tuesdays.
Okay.
You'll need to reserve the room.
We don't even know the date yet, though.
We'll get that done.
Okay.
So we will have a June meeting and we will get the notice done for it.
Need a motion?
Yes, sir, please.
Motion made.
And that's a
Also-
motion to have a June meeting?
A motion calling for a June board meeting
Time to be announced.
to be determined.
Been made, Jim second, Jennifer? Approved?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so when you make that meeting, someone's gonna be needing to be prepared to pay for that meeting.
With a new credit card.
Well, you have to have an authorized user.
I'm teasing. Yeah, we gotta we gotta figure out who that even is. So I mean, we got so much going on here; it's ridiculous. And now the
So don't we have, now we have 2 more items still to talk about, right?
I just have one.
No, we
No, yeah, we just did the meeting one.
Yeah, we got the meeting, which is what I added, and I had to discuss the treasurer or
Selection
manager
process.
/ treasurer selection process.
Right. That's the last.
That's the last one I have.
Yes, sir. That's the last one.
Does anybody have any ideas?
I do.
Any candidates?
No.
I do.
Ideas is, so do you have something?
No, I'm just in light of her letter, I just had some thoughts of individuals.
Sure.
Well, there's, I did with what Mr. Pringle said about taking also a business format versus an individual, having a manager separate to the secretary treasurer, because I think you indicated that it could also be a business that could come in and do that.
Well,
Are you saying like have an accounting firm do the
Yeah.
treasury or do you?
Secretary treasurer.
Okay.
And,
Or a
and
management
then
firm.
have a separate manager, and I agree with that.
To take a little bit of load off of this person.
Yeah.
To,
So you have a
Instead of
focus
having
manager
15
and
hats on?
focus, yeah, not so many hats, and break it up a little
But
bit.
you still need a secretary.
I think the treasury position can also be secretary treasurer. If
For the
they have
firm?
it, yeah. And then I know like some property management companies, and I have some people that I know. There's just thoughts going through my head for that.
Mr. Pringle indicated that there are companies that do that, so, and then that gives a place for the files to be kept that become legal, more legal than they're currently done.
so then that even helps us with this.
So it's
Sure,
not-
okay.
Sure, it
That's
helps.
just
Whatever
what
this,
it's like that.
our audit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we pursue this?
Well, let's just-
Well, Jim took over that. I can help do
Why
that.
don't we put Jennifer in
Unless
charge
you
of
wanna do
this?
that.
I don't. All right. I
Okay.
would appreciate any help.
Yeah, I can do that.
Whatever you.
So the motion-
If you know firms,
Yeah.
that would be.
Well, we got to do an ad too, right? Correct?
Yes, ma'am. At the board's pleasure, yes, ma'am. That's a decision for the board, yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, this is a decision that we're probably going to have to at least decide how we're going to move forward, because as of the 31st, we no longer have a secretary, treasurer, or manager. So we're gonna have some leeway here to allow for her to temporarily, if not, I would not suggest permanently for any one of us to act without the board, but she could temporarily put somebody in place until the board reviews it and decides whether that would be permanent or not. And so that's what I would think we need to suggest, is that we do that.
And my question is, what happens next month if something happens and we obviously can't talk because of the sunshine law? Do we go to you?
Well, that's why we need to authorize Jennifer to move forward with a temporary employment, and then they bring that information to the board next month, whereas we make a decision to continue that or to advertise that job, or we advertise it now, and we still gotta have a temporary position. So that's what I would think we need to do. We've done this in the past years, even year and a half ago, there was a situation where we authorized a member of the board to do that, similar thing, so.
That would, so, if I may, I'm listening, trying to listen more than talk. It sounds like June 1st is the day after Ms. Lawson's resignation takes effect. And beginning that day, the board person appointed to oversee the work, the financial and the record keeping and the work is who? Is that Ms. Jennifer?
Or the person that we suggest to do it?
Because I heard a couple of different parts, and I'm just trying to make sure. Because one thing is the person to oversee getting the application completed and released so that you can get responses back of people who might want to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing, and I thought I heard that Miss Jennifer was, Miss Supervisor Finazzo was that job. But then I heard a lot of discussion about, okay, well, what are we going to do June 1st? A board member could do that work on a
No, we
temporary
weren't
basis.
asking that the board member do it. I was suggesting that we give her the authorization to interview some firms that do that kind of work and temporarily put one in position to do that, and then bring that person or company or multiple companies back to the June board meeting, whereas then we can interview them or review other choices along with that. We're not authorizing her to hire permanently. We're just simply saying temporarily while we're in the interim period of time that we allow her to move forward with picking a firm, preferably local to the community, that can do that.
On a temporary basis.
On a
So
temporary
that's,
basis.
so that's a
I
second.
understand what he's.
So that's a second
Okay, got it.
part of that authorization. First part being get the application done to get us a person in on a permanent
Sure.
basis. Second part being find somebody to do the work on a temporary basis.
Correct.
Was the second part. Did I? Okay. All right. And then the other question would be,
But there's going to be or actually 3 parts.
that was the next
Secretary,
question.
treasurer, manager.
Right. So then the next question would be, how do you divide the work? Do you divide it as the manager who, generally speaking, superintendent is also a reference, a title reference to the person who does the day-to-day reviews, the inspections, to see if there's, handle the complaints, to see if there's an interference of everything from somebody's wiped out the guardrail to somebody's knocked down a telephone pole in the middle of the swale ditch to somebody's filled in the swale ditch. That's a manager / superintendent kind of a role to be in the district looking at things going on in the district. Separate and apart from the treasurer, bookkeeper, financial person who receives invoices, verifies invoices, gets checks together for the board to approve and sign, handles the budget. You've got budget time coming up soon as well that will require, Ms. Chris will tell you, quite a bit of effort to figure all of that out as well. So that's another aspect. So is that the division? Is it the day-to-day manager type on the one hand?
The day-to-day manager versus the administrative side.
Okay.
And therefore, in a new manager, what we might look for is a person who has some mechanical skills, who might take on some of the daily tasks that we now hire other people to do. So the person, because less time that person has to do
in the district.
Yeah, so it might, it depends how financially we end up in this decision-making process over the next number of weeks. We're gonna have to start figuring that out. But that person that we hire should be able to have mechanical skills to do signs and do this and do that.
So then those are I think the 3 parts are, part 1 would be to put together the request for the permanent position.
We also have the job descriptions, I guess, too,
Yes,
drawn
so
up.
that would be a part of it. That would be a part of it. The second would be approval of someone to do the work on a temporary basis. And then the third would be the division of the job will be into the 2 parts of the manager of the district work that you're talking about, and then the treasurer, board secretary, administrative functions. Would be the 2 parts. Does that sound like?
I think you're about got it.
Is that close? Okay. All right. Okay. Because what you may end up doing is you may end up saying, well, for the financial and the administrative function, like somebody said, an accounting firm might do. That's what does the work in other water control, smaller water control districts, and then the records stay in their office, and they have an office, and that's an office address, and that's all a good thing. And public records request can go there, and and then they do the financials, and they do the budget preparation and those elements that are, as Chris will tell you, is a lot of detail in that. So that work would be that administrative function, and then the separate would be the district work in the district, overseeing what's going on and what's happening. That would be the person that would interact probably with the engineer and let the engineer know this is a problem, this needs to be fixed, this is done, this is not done, whatever. Roads are rutted, things are in bad shape here, or whatever. Would be that manager of work stuff.
I'm hoping that we'll find somebody that has a lot more time to spend doing that, so that we have just things that need more attention, I think, out in the subdivision. And for basically, it was outlined here, we need a plan for the future for maintenance and stuff that doesn't seem to be in there now.
And we're going to add like a dollar amount to this, I guess, tonight, also?
To
like these job descriptions, I guess? Because how are you going to put it up for bid if you don't even know what they're going to make, or what? You kind of come up with a salary or an hourly rate, or how do you?
I don't have any clue what these services charge for what Mr.
Or is that something that you're going to bring back and just like kind of, Jennifer, you're going to like propose the job and see what it would cost to have?
Well, I can get
firm?
with you regarding the job description information, and then I can reach out.
Okay, I just didn't know, do we have to set a dollar amount on that, or they're going to come back and kind of like bid what it would cost to do
They'd
that?
probably bid.
Okay, all right,
Or have a standardized fee.
that makes sense.
I mean, the manager position would be more of like, I guess, a salary.
Yeah, that's something we could just turn
In
later,
line.
but
Right.
was, I don't know, do you have anything?
And I guess it would depend on what Mr. Pringle thought. I mean, we may have, we're sort of running out of people here tonight. We may have somebody here who might say, well, I'll step up and do that for that period of time while we figure something out, and we're probably gonna have to pay them a token amount of money to do that if we did that. Otherwise, getting from the 31st to an advertised point in time, and deciding what a job description is going to be, we have our hands full. It's, and not exceeding the budget that we've allotted for the position. So we have to divide that up and see what we've got.
And so you may not have all the pieces put together because they're two items, not one, and they're very different scopes of work. One being the district work in the district, and the other one being the financial, the treasurer's aspects, and so there's very different scopes. I don't know. I mean,
Till Jennifer goes out and finds out what the costs are going to be annually for the service, then we really don't know what's left to do the other side.
So I can see where I was heading is I can see this being beyond the June board meeting. I mean, I just, the other one is pretty straightforward. The engineer selection, I mean, I've done those before. This one is
now we're creating two new jobs.
Then would we be in a position, though, instead of trying to make a decision on the secretary, treasurer, and the manager, in which I would prefer that it got extended out, I would like to put temporary people in place till we had time to contend with this on a more rational basis so that we know where we're going. I don't
want to make a jump conclusion, just pick somebody. Too.
I don't either. But a temporary person, it's no different than putting in a firefighter to fill your position at the fire station.
Yeah.
You do that on a temporary basis, and they go away when you end the position.
Who else in the room knows the system better?
Mr. Pringle, I have a question. Can a temporary person step in for just a period of time and be able to do anything financial?
That's what I'm saying, like sign checks and
that's
we gotta get all the banks to change over.
And Chris has to be Chris is bonded,
Yes, that's what I
and
was
so
gonna
as
say.
far as doing anything financial, you may be kind of
the
at a standstill for quite a
the
while.
bonding element.
And are you gonna have full-time people or part-time people? You know, I mean, if you hire a firm, it's probably more full-time. So you're probably gonna be looking at a lot more money that you're gonna have to spend because you're gonna have 2 separate jobs. And you were saying you wanted someone that's out there in the district more hours and more time. I will say, in the past, going back as long as I can remember, the job has been a salaried position, not an hourly position. Going back to Bud Lawson, who I worked with when I was first on the board, was his husband. And he worked out of his home, and he was a salaried person, and followed by Julia Roberts. And it was not always certainly was not a 40-hour-a-week job. It was a kind of a job that you accomplished a certain task or tasks. There were times of the year and times of the month and so forth where you may put in a lot of hours, and there may be times where you put in very few hours. But the whole thing was to accomplish the job and be available. And I know that I remember Julia would always have her phone, whether she went to visit her kids in Texas or she was working out in the backyard, she'd have the phone. And she'd be out there pulling weeds. But she certainly didn't sit in an office 8 hours a day. No one ever did. I can remember Bud at times. He would be home, he had his insurance business on the side, and he did something else also. But that's the way it's always been and I spoke to Julia Roberts, I speak to Julia Roberts regularly, almost on a weekly basis. And she has always said, oh my God, no, it's not full-time. She says, some weeks I only spend 10 hours. I drive around the district, pick up the mail, and there's nothing going on, especially in certain months. Normally those months would have been January, February, March. But then certain times there's a lot to do, getting the audit reports, getting the budgets done, and the week, the few days before a meeting and the days after a meeting, an annual meeting, there's a lot of hours she may spend 50 hours that week, but it's never been an hourly thing. I know for years I worked in a salary position, and there's some weeks I didn't do anything.
Well, I can
But
look
got the job done.
Sorry, I can look to Mr. Pringle too, because I've spoken to him about other water districts having accounting firms handle the accounting and treasury part of it, so that it looks to be the manager position is the one that's going to definitely be salary.
Which, yeah, I would say. And
Ms. Lawson, are you moving?
Pardon?
Are you moving?
No.
Okay. I'm just curious why you're resigning all of a sudden.
Personal reasons.
Make sure we're helping.
And Jennifer, if it's any help to you,
yes,
I do have what we used before as far as job description. You probably have it too, job description and the copies of the previous ads. If you probably have it, but if you don't, I have all that.
Okay, thank you.
make it easier.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm happy to continue Secretary Treasurer through June while you all are trying to figure this out and make sure that the bills get paid. But
I was going to ask, would you mind?
I don't have a problem doing that.
Do they month to month
like Morrison to Pew?
Like Morrison to Pew?
That'd make it easier instead of someone trying to step in and just start signing checks and getting banks to cross over.
So there could be a transition too.
If you're willing to do that, I know I'd appreciate it.
But I don't.
There's probably a surcharge on that though, if you already resigned. Pay a little extra to stay. Save you guys money later.
It's just when you think about it, you've got the phone that you need to get transferred.
All the bank accounts.
You got
and the bonding requirement.
Requirement.
Even before they start, is the bonding requirement has to be satisfied.
But I only want to do the Secretary Treasurer part.
Correct.
Oh, that's fair.
And it should be able to be wrapped up in June. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, do you?
I
think so.
June to July, like the same timeline as for the Pew.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is because in July, you have to start doing the budget stuff and the work.
It has to be.
Yeah.
So that's the viewpoint on that.
So what do we need? A motion, a handshake,
And then you have to decide what you're going to pay me to do that part.
What would you like? I don't know how else to put that one.
Yeah. But we'll keep you around for another month.
Well, I'm just doing the secretary treasurer.
That's what do we just keep it the same? Is that okay?
That's
in my eyes.
fine. That's fine. Okay. So we're for June, and then probably have it done for July.
Legally, do we need anything? Motion? Anything?
So yes, sir. A couple of things with the resignation. So a motion to well, let me start at the beginning. A motion to authorize Supervisor Finazzo to oversee doing the competitive selection parts. 2, 1 for treasurer, administrative / treasurer position person, 1 for the manager / superintendent of the district works in the district. So those are the 2 positions. Supervisor Finazzo would be authorized to get it going. Help. She tells me what I need to do. We'll get it going.
Okay.
That would be a motion to authorize, because you're authorizing her to do work that otherwise generally would be done by the board.
Motion made.
I'll second it.
Aye.
All right. So that gets you the permanent person. And then I think the second would be on a temporary basis. You were talking about Supervisor Finazzo finding somebody, but now
we just spent all the money over here.
Yes. So it would be a motion to hire Ms. Lawson.
As an independent contractor?
Yes, sir, for at least the first month to do the administrative functions only.
Okay.
And the turnover.
Yes, ma'am. The transition. And I think, and honestly, I think that's gonna, I mean, she says June, but I think it's gonna take a little bit longer for all of that effort to be completed. I think so.
Month to month.
There may be, yes, ma'am, to do it on a month-to-month basis, and if we're all done at the end of June, then God bless us all. But I think that would be a push.
Motion made.
Second. Third.
Aye.
So we're covered?
I think so.
We only have one thing that we didn't
I was gonna say, I see it sitting right here in front of me.
No,
Oh, wait.
we actually left the manager's job hanging out there. There's who's going to do that. She said she didn't want to do that, but we just gave her all the money to do the job she's doing. So I personally don't mind being called to go check things, but I don't know how we do that.
Well, again, just like Supervisor Finazzo was assigned to do certain work on behalf of the board, if you're willing to do that and the board is willing for you to do that, then the board would authorize you to do that by board action, by board motion. So the board motion would be to authorize.
So I guess I would volunteer to do it.
Yes, sir.
But till we can get this resolved.
So on a temporary basis, the motion would be on a temporary basis to authorize Supervisor Bradford to oversee the district work, to be the manager, the overseer of the district work in the district.
Motion made.
Can the 3 of us do? Or that's...
Yes, well, you can.
Any
absolutely.
supervisor that's called.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe.
So
That's
like,
right.
it's not just bearing on one person's shoulders, it's...
Yeah.
You could do that too, yes, ma'am.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Can I make a suggestion? When I was first on the board, we used to take turns checking the, you know how she checks the district periodically, like once a week. We all alternated, and going back to Carolyn Williamson, who's the chairman of the board, when she was my next door neighbor, and she did it solely in the beginning, but it got to be a lot because she was busy. And so then I remember John Nickerson would do it, and we'd take turns. and make the rounds once a week or month, or however whatever the schedule was, so you kept track of what's going on. And I know you do it weekly, right? And I know Julia did it weekly, but just to see what was going on. I mean, it doesn't take too long; it takes a couple hours. You know, you do all the streets and see if you see anything.
Actually, it's been taking a lot longer.
Yeah, I know.
Because we've got so many people, I mean, just so many contractors just not doing things properly.
Yeah.
Properly. I mean.
I know, because I did it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's taking a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
We'll just all three take it on.
Yeah.
It's fine.
There's 3 eyeballs looking at it. You might think there's something wrong, you might think there's something wrong, so it's okay. You know,
Yeah.
looking at it.
That's why those meetings are gonna be a nightmare until we.
And you guys getting paid to do this, or this is?
No, we spent the money over here, so we don't have any money left.
They make $50 a month when you want.
How long are you willing to do this for free?
So we're trying.
Thank you, by the way.
Gotta get somebody in
We're
there.
trying to do it for 1 month and get things squared away, so.
Okay, honestly, I feel bad not, at full salary doing that without the other. So
Don't
I'm happy to
feel
take
bad.
it less.
Don't feel bad.
You're saving us.
You're worth it.
That's fine.
This is where the hourly thing seems attractive to me anyway. Just saying.
Well, we've got the opportunity to write that
Yeah,
in the future.
Yeah.
Let's settle this for tonight so we can move forward.
And so that does not require board action because all
Okay.
3 of you are going to be doing that job equally.
Mm-hmm.
Just please don't meet in the middle of the street and compare notes. And
No.
Just take
Gotcha.
some chalk and write on the road as you pass.
there you go.
The only.
Rain erases it.
So you'll send me an email if you just identify something that needs to be put up on the update.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say this because I'm sitting here thinking of everything that you're putting together and that you're wanting to get accomplished in a short time period. And that's the engineer selection and this all before the end of June. I'm just telling you, that's going to be a stretch.
Yeah.
That's going to be a stretch. So that's going to be a stretch. And out of those 2, do you want to focus on the engineer selection as the higher priority to get that done? And
Well, I'm going to start on that tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
I'm gonna start on this tomorrow.
And
I'm going out of town tomorrow.
you get the ad together and post
Richard,
it.
Judy, you and Julia had a different way of doing budget hearings from the way I did it back in 2000 with Kevin. We actually had meeting hearings that were published and meetings that were discussed, but you didn't do that. You incorporated that into the regular meeting. So those hearings have to be started in July.
The budget hearing was always in July. And that was just to go over everything. But then the actual budget meeting was in August.
That was more of a
A workshop.
So does that need to be advertised?
If it's held in a regular board meeting, I'm in.
Okay.
And because you do non-ad valorem assessments, not ad valorem taxes, that whole preliminary budget hearing, a tentative budget hearing and final budget hearing process, and having the dates to be a certain budget hearing date separation and things like that doesn't apply because you're doing non-ad valorem assessments. But what we were doing was they would have the workshop, they would discuss the budget, it would get finalized, and then we would adopt the budget by resolutions, a separate resolution for each of the 3 assessments, non-ad valorem assessments, and we did all of that in August, right?
Yeah,
So
but it seemed the final was always September, right around almost into September. The way Julia would do it is she would go through to see what we had actually spent, what we had budgeted before, and she'd do a big chart. So, and she'd go back a couple of years, she'd have a couple of fiscal years, and I have
Then
it
we'd
all.
sit there and guess and spitball and be like, hey, we're going on our building, on our driveways.
And then she'd put how much we had spent to date and how much the anticipated was to spend through the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then she and I would sit
Based
down.
on previous years and. whatever, yeah.
And prior to the July meeting, she and I would sit down and go through every line item and discuss it. So we had a really good feel going into that July meeting. So then we'd sit down at the July meeting and we had it
Tweak it from there.
spelled out pretty good. Yeah.
All right, but we're doing a lot. Y'all are making a lot of changes, so there's going to be some things that we don't know that.
Yeah, like-
So you all are going to have to, as part of this process, kind of come up with some ideas of numbers.
Right.
And then the other thing that hasn't been discussed is projects that you're going to want to accomplish in the next year, such as whether or not you're going to create and maintain the gate, the 2 foot, clear up the mess that the 2 foot at the gates are, and then do a process for
That's gotta be a
maintaining.
line item, yeah.
So is that, and what other projects that you might be thinking about that you want to do so that we can bring
Put them all
that
in the budget.
into the July meeting?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
because you're going to be running
Yeah,
right
we're also
into tax rolls time and
Right, that whole thing.
And that contingency fund, that needs to be part of that too, correct?
well, the fund balance assignment policies part of that.
Okay.
You have to remember, any projects you take on, you are, and Mr. Pringle can fill this in, any money you spend has to be for the benefit of drainage. In other words, you can't just spend money on anything you want. You know, if you wanted to put, pave the roads, you have to have a good reason to do that. Like, we had a reason to pave the roads when we did because it was to maintain the drainage, so we were covered. But if you want to do something, like one time Jim mentioned putting bicycle paths in, you're not authorized to do that. Because that doesn't fall in, right, so I'm just saying it doesn't fall into drainage.
Yes, you-
People can.
Projects we're thinking about next year, they have to be associated with
Yes.
drainage.
It has to be for the purpose of
Justified.
drainage, and he
Yeah,
can tell
or
you what
justified,
that
yeah.
is. But you can give someone permission to do something, but you can't spend any of this money on it.
Okay.
And then, Richard, do we have the issue with the phase 2 payoff? That we
Let's
want.
do that another time.
Okay.
I would rather not have to think that far, that deep, because
Okay.
that's a deep thought.
Because that's going to have to be part of the budget
Yes,
for
it
next
is.
year.
It is. No
Okay.
question.
You all understand what
Yeah,
that,
I
what that
remember.
question is?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
gonna have to be addressed, yes.
Okay.
Jim, do you understand that question?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just got these checks in front of me though.
Okay, so I guess we got to debate and talk about those a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know what you want to do with the Morris View, and I don't know what you want to do with the sweep.
I've got 2 things I want to bring up concerning both of those. Okay, number 1 is that Morris Depew forgave that bill last month sitting here. He said that he was not going to charge us for last month. Now, what he's done since then, he specifically said that sitting here and gave it back.
Yeah, I remember him handing it back to us.
Okay, that's what he
But
said.
did he say he forgave it? I
He
didn't hear that on the
Those were
tape.
words out of
So
his mouth and gave it back to us.
I do remember him handing
Yeah.
you and I the check and said, "I'm not taking a check this month." Which
that's
check
different
was
than
it?
forgiving the bill.
No, he used the word. So he said that he was not going to charge us. So
Okay.
he
But I don't know
gave it
which
back.
check that is. Is it the 12 or
Oh,
13?
it's marked on there.
That was
It's
the
the
The dates are the
3:30.
same. I'm just saying.
No. Look at the memo line. One says 4:30. One says 3:30.
Okay. All right. And then
So then we're gonna avoid
Now-
that one.
Now the question that I have, and we need so probably send him a letter just identifying what he said, so that we're,
this is
we don't need a late notice coming later on.
Right.
Now, as far as the sweeper man goes, I gotta tell you, I'm a little confused here that the guy would even come and question us, but I do know that we need to identify anybody that we ever reject payment to. We need to send them a notice or a letter saying that we've rejected your payment because of. I truly expected that man would have his truck out here this month and probably have done the work without asking. But I saw that didn't happen because I went and checked the work before we came to the meeting. So I know that he's done nothing forward. I looked at San Carlos Park's pipes after they power jetted those. You could eat inside them. I showed you guys pictures of those. There's not one pipe we have. I mean, you guys saw the pictures. All of you out here probably saw the pictures. I mean, we're looking at dirt that deep in some of them, and some of them you can't see through, and one of them was collapsed. And I don't understand for the life of me how he can say he did all 3 pipes. Somebody told me that before the meeting, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Right at the moment he did that.
Yeah, I don't know how we can justify paying it either, because the work just wasn't completed.
So I think that one, if we had to, we'd take it all the way to the courthouse down to a court. And I don't think there's a judge down there that's gonna award him money for doing that.
Okay, so you want me to send him a letter saying that we are not paying this bill for lack of performance?
Yeah, and I think we fire him. I don't think we even, I think it's.
Well, there's
done.
nothing to fire because he's a month to month.
Well,
he's
okay,
using as
okay.
need basis, we just won't ever use them. But
You know, I've known the guy for 25 years.
Can you do that?
And not personally, but I've known him as a business person. And when I saw him here the night he came to introduce himself, I was quite surprised that I did know him. But we talked for a few minutes, and to see that he didn't do the work just blew me away. And, you know, I've talked to so many people out here who have said, the elusive sweeper man, we've never seen him. Well, that truck makes a lot of noise. And if he's doing the pipes, somebody ought to see him once in a while and hear him. In past years, I've asked the crowd out here, and I've talked to people all over the place. I know he must have been doing some work.
I was gonna say, I didn't know he did mine. A couple of times I come home, like, what in the hell's wrong? Like, because it was a bunch of like washed out, but new culvert too. You know, so it's, I don't know.
Yeah, well, if it was a new pipe, you probably didn't need to do it, because the pipes will last about 5 to 8 years in between cleanings. And a rotation through here for X amount of pipes per year should clean every pipe to the point they should never have that in.
Yeah.
Even after all of those years. We're not flowing dirt through our canals. It's not, you know, that sand and garbage that's in them didn't just fill up.
All I know is that work wasn't done.
So.
Okay, so
If he wants to come out.
can I send a letter saying that?
So, Mr. Chairman, just to make sure that everything is clear in the record as to what's going to happen. First, it appears that you are objecting to his invoice, and you're not going to pay it as a result of objecting to it. You don't believe the work's been done. So you should notify him of that fact.
Yes.
So that he will have an opportunity to, and he may come next meeting and say, I did the work and here's the proof, and then you can make a decision further decision.
Yes.
But at this point, the board decision is, and I think it should be board action to say that you have a bill, you have an invoice, and you're choosing not to pay it because you don't believe the work has been performed.
I think that if we move forward with allowing to do the work, I know the invoice that I had, and I thought I had it here. I thought I had it in front of me, and I wanted to just read it. He gave out how many feet of pipe he cleaned. I measured every length of pipe, and he was short by about 800 feet. Now, don't quote me on that, but he was short by a very large, significant number of feet. And I gave him a grace of about 1 foot on each side of every pipe I measured, and I did all 5 roads. The only road he did right was Waterfall, and there's no culverts on it. So that was a joke, but nonetheless, the point being is
This
that
is the April 30th.
he charged us for more pipes. I was told that they used some other formula that Lee County has for doing the pipes. But if you take and clean, you look at every brand new pipe, and I did every single pipe. And if you remember last month, I put new pipes, old pipes, everything that I lined out, everything, and I still have that report. So I would think that if he's going to continue forward and do the work for us, that instead of allowing him just to go out and halfway do them, we need to know what his performance is going to be.
And that's a second separate item.
Okay.
Is right now he is performs work for the district on a month-to-month basis.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change from that situation, then that takes board action.
Okay, but you're saying we cannot change the current contract we have with him, which on his paper, it says the Jet Power cleaned all the pipes.
Right.
And he numbered the 30, I believe it was 3,800 feet or something close to that. and power jetting them. When I looked at San Carlos Park's pipes, you could eat them. And there was none of ours that were, I can tell you from looking at them and knowing what Ben said about the water that comes out of the ends of them, if any of them have been power cleaned, you know it's been done.
You see it when you come home.
And especially seeing Sal the Park, he did do was take a shovel or a scooper and he cleaned each end of the pipe, and he took a shovel and cleaned them to the point you couldn't see the residue left. For me, I saw that as being an intentional intent not to do the work.
Does he do San Carlos too?
No, he does not. Another company did. Does that make a difference?
No, but I'm just curious. Is he doing the job for
No.
them like he
And
should
he's
be,
not doing
and
the
he's
job.
not doing it for us?
Let me rephrase the answer, please. I don't know, but I'm looking at those. And
Right, but I was just curious if you knew if he was doing their work too.
So do we need a motion, or do you mind
So-
writing a letter?
I can write a letter, but
Rewind.
Okay.
If I may, please, real quick. It's getting late, and I apologize.
What's that? Oh,
You're discussing an item that is not on your agenda
no, yeah,
That should have been.
to be discussed. So we need to make sure that we do this the right way, because if you don't pay him the invoice, he may decide to take action, and I want us to be as clean as we can be if we go down, if that's the path this goes.
He's doing the cleaning, you won't be.
So that was another.
I don't know how many years he's been doing the work out there.
Sounds like there's reasonably, this isn't the first month he hasn't cleaned
He needs to sign that one.
So, Mr. Chairman, first action is, could you entertain a motion to add the sweeper man matter as a
old
business agenda item? Yes.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's, and
Right.
all is in favor. Okay, so now you've added the item to the agenda. So the first part of that item is consideration of whether you are going to pay or not pay the invoiced amount.
To not pay and have Ms. Lawson draft a letter stating why.
Okay. So that's the action. Is that in the form of a motion then?
Motion made.
Okay.
Motion to not pay.
And to send a letter
Send
instead
letter.
of objection describing this is the reason why we're not paying.
Yes.
So there's some description. All right, so that's a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Aye.
So there's a second to that motion. Before you call the question, call for public input, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any public input on the matter? No public input at this time.
Then you can call the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And please let the record reflect that he did call for public input before he took the
Public
vote.
input.
So then the second part of that item is, what do you do with the sweeper man agreement going forward? Do you want to leave it as a month-to-month agreement? Do you want to officially terminate it and start looking for other people, other contractors to provide the service? What's the board's pleasure on the
Jim needs to sign that one.
contract?
Somebody needs to sign it.
I would like to, on one hand, say we just totally terminating, but on the other hand, I would wonder if we didn't just identify the work with the inspection required, no matter who's doing the work. I don't know how many of these companies are out there.
I was just gonna
Very
say,
few. We had a hard time.
yeah.
One other time, Dad was gonna stop doing it, and we couldn't find anybody else to do it, and that year we had a hard time getting the maintenance done.
Well, there's culvert pipes all over the,
Yeah, but it's hard to.
But I'm just saying, I hate to
At the
terminate
time,
it
he was
completely.
the only guy that did it.
What if next month he wants to do it, we need to write him a check or something, or whatever, for half of it, or
Would
I
you
say let's
like
just
to
leave it.
Okay. In the letter, would you like to let him know, not paying the bill, have some objection, don't believe the work was done, give him the opportunity to respond and let you know what work he actually
Pretty sure he probably will respond anyway, but yeah, I mean.
But if you invite him to
Yes.
respond, invite him to respond in writing and tell you why he believes he's entitled to the fee.
Well,
he can give you that.
If we had done this last month based on the knowledge we have, he would have committed a fraudulent act if he cashed the check. But that doesn't put the money back in our bank account.
Yeah.
I'd rather we had the check.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're not going to take any action with regard to the status of the contract, and the letter's going to say, if you want to give us a written response, give us a written response.
Sure, yes.
Okay. That's it. No other action is required that I can think of.
All right, so do we need a motion? Is it a motion?
A motion was made to not pay him and
Mhm.
instead to send him
Right.
a letter of
And I have that, okay.
and to authorize,
Yep.
telling he can submit a written response to the letter.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the April 19th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Fine.
And motion
Three.
to approve the April 2022 bank statements
Okay, so what you're approving here is the bank statements, and
and the
I
financial
haven't seen
reports.
the original statements come back down here.
Oh, are they over here? Oh, they're waiting Jim's approval. And they're going to.
So you're approving the bank statements.
And the financial reports.
The April 22 financial reports, the May 22 bills, and what's not on here, because of the auditor's comments, you want to approve the May reports that were presented, which was the check
Yeah, the
detail,
Right.
the
Yes.
comparison, and the analysis.
So move.
Second.
And I'm going to move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
You're right.
All right, so just before we end, I had talked to Jennifer in advance because of the comments, and Jennifer had agreed to receive the bank statements unopened. I will order a stamp for her to stamp the statements after she's reviewed them, sign it, date it, and it's saying that they've been reviewed and there's no discrepancies.
Correct.
Okay, so just so you all know that that's in play.
Awesome.
I have a question.
Please.
That said you paid off in phase 1 or phase 2 of the?
Two.
So we're gonna have phase 2, when is that done for us paying?
Phase 1.
Phase 1 and phase 2, we still have our tax bill. So
Phase
next year-
1's on your tax bill. Phase 2 wasn't on the
It
tax
should be
bill.
off now.
Yeah, it should be
This
off.
next year will be off.
It was off this year.
Okay. How much longer for phase 1?
20,
We should have one in 2024.
yeah, 20.
Yeah, 2024.
4 more years?
Yeah. If it works.
But we got to come back.
Can I clarify another little thing, please? So, what happened was, in July, the decision was made to pay off the phase 2 loan. All right? The phase 2 assessment is still in effect.
I get it, they paid off earlier to say the district money.
The
We still
interest.
gotta pay off.
That's right. And so they paid it from the reserves of the district. So now, the phase 2 assessment for the remaining time,
Oh, it's still on the tax roll.
in my opinion, is still due and payable
There you go.
to replenish the reserves of the budget.
So 2024 should not be any more phase 1 or phase 2 on my tax bill.
It should be completed on phase 2, and I'm not sure about that. Does it wrap up at the same time?
Well, actually, yes, they do, and we're like paying ourselves back.
No, yeah, I totally get it.
It's not
I just
like
want to know
we're
if
gonna
I'm
see
paying for
less
3
money.
lots.
I see that it kind of it benefited the district to pay it off sooner, which is good for everybody.
It
But
benefited the taxpayers to do that.
yeah,
But the problem is, we cannot go back to the tax collector to collect phase 2. So we have to figure out, A, what is the dollar amount?
wow, it's a deep thought.
2, how are we going to allocate that dollar amount to the taxpayers? And 3, how are we going to bill and collect those monies?
I think you guys just ate it. Should have thought of it before you paid it off.
But there's a way to
That's
do it.
that's problem. And the reason why we can't go back to the tax collector is because the state was told
You're
it was
saying that
done.
we just lost half our budget?
No.
Oh.
I'm saying we have to find a means in which to bill the taxpayer, the people that had not paid it off. You have to bill them, and then get the money back. And so it's going, huh?
Hopefully you're gonna get the money back.
And then you have to decide what you're going to do if they don't pay it back. So glad it's going to a service.
Yeah.
My question you guys should ask if you paid it off.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought it was just.
If we
Pay it off
hadn't
and get erased.
if we hadn't told the state that we were done with that
They're
assessment,
still collecting it though.
then we could have gone back to the tax roll. All right, and the other thing y'all have to consider for the July meeting, before August 1st, we have to decide how much phase 1 we want to pay extra over and above the amount that's due, because we have to tell the bank that. So that they
Right
can.
now, I would have to tell you on what we have to pay them until we decide where we're at financially.
Well, you can't. You have to use those monies for that purpose. So you can either keep it in the budget and carry it forward next year, or you can pay it off or pay additional than what's owed, which is what you have typically done and you have in the budget to do. But you have to decide on the dollar amount that you want to do, and then we have to notify Bank of America before, 2 weeks before at least, August 1st, of that dollar amount. So you already have it in the budget to pay extra. It's just a matter of, we don't have quite that much extra collected yet. We might by July.
I think we should put a hold on that till the June meeting.
Yeah, I'm just saying, things for you to think about.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I know you're.